Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 54 and in this edition we will be podcasting from two different timelines in our first of two podcasts reviewing the brand new Resident Evil Netflix series. My name is Cy and joining me on the panel this week, a one in a horde of zeros, it's Fire Button Steve Valance.
Hello everybody.
Little does he know that I've been taking and storing his blood in my mini fridge for reasons. It's Moist Owlet, aka James.
Edgar.
Killer Dog Bite. It's Kelsey, aka Mr. KDB.
Hello.
Every episode of First Aid Spray is recorded live on our Discord server, so join now to hear the show early and unedited and to become part of our fantastic little community where we discuss life, the universe, and Resident Evil. You can find a link to the server as well as all of our social media profiles at our website, faspraypod.com. It's the support of our listeners that keeps First Aid Spray going, so why not check out our merchandise or our Patreon page? Tiers begin at just $1 a month. Head over to patreon.com/FASprayPod for a full list and the chance to create bonus First Aid Spray content. Housekeeping, let's do it. So, thank you to some new patrons, thank you to Residents of the Dead, and thank you to Richard Thomas. Thank you to all of our patrons who continue to support us over there in various different ways, and we continue to put out early and exclusive content for you guys. I hope you are enjoying your current early looks at Tear Death Experience. Brand new episode came out, which is save room themes, which is a very different and very challenging thing to rank, but I feel like that went quite well, so you can check that out early now. And also a new episode of Memory Card Lane, where the guys looked at, fair to say, very much overlooked adventure game for the NES called Faxanadu. In the meantime, public releases. The new Memory Card Lane episode of Pilot Wings is out. If you haven't seen that now, head over to YouTube to check that out for the Super Nintendo version of Pilot Wings. We also put together Kelsey particularly put together 5 things we want to see in Resident Evil Netflix. So it might be interesting to go back and watch that now and see how, not wrong because it was wishes, but how far of the mark it was. And lastly, the latest episode of Now That's What I Call Survival Horror is out, which is Steve picking his top 10 tracks from Parasite Eve. The first time we've journeyed outside of Resident Evil for the show. I very much had a good time, even as someone who's never played Parasite Eve, so I would recommend it to everyone, in fact. That's all of our news. We are actually just going to skip over any Biohazard news and get into the main podcast on this episode, because there hasn't been a lot that isn't related to the brand new show. Nothing really sizable. So let's jump right into the main subject of this episode, which is part 1 of Resident Evil Netflix. Oh boy, it's that time. It feels like it. How weird does it feel that it's been about 7 months since the last live action adaptation of Resident Evil, and here we are yet again talking about another live action adaptation of Resident Evil, going from the Roberts-verse, if you will, to the Dabbverse, sometimes the Reddick-verse, whatever you want to call it. R-E-N. That's not a thing, James. It's not a thing.
NRE!
Oh, sorry, NRE. See, that's how much of a not thing it is.
Hashtag Team NRE. They're trying to cancel me. I will not be silenced.
Right, so moving on from that swiftly.
Team Ren and Team Stimpy. Yeah, exactly.
This episode is going to focus on the first half of the show. We decided before we sat down to record that the best course of action is not to try and talk about 8 sort of roughly hour-long episodes in one go. If you've been with First Aid Spray long enough, you'll know how long it takes us to talk about, just an hour and a half worth of movie. I think our Welcome to Raccoon City episode is bumping up on 3 hours, and we definitely could have gone longer. So it logically made sense to cut this in half. So in this episode, we are going to be spoiler light-ish. I would recommend you watch all of the show anyway, regardless of listening to this, because I can't guarantee things won't slip through. But we are mostly going to be focusing on the first 4 episodes and a general overview. So speaking of the general overview, James, in fact, let's start with you. My first question is, going into the show for the first time, before it even dropped, how were you feeling about what we knew about it, what we'd seen about it? What were your expectations on on Resident Evil Netflix?
My expectations were pretty middling. Every time I'd see a poster of the show, it would get me hype because those posters were amazing. The hype for this show was pretty great, and the cast were always very, very excited about it, which I think is like since the remakes has been the game remakes has been a constant. Like the cast and crew have been very positive about what they're working with, and it's always great to see that because even in any kind of media, when you see devs or you see publishers or you see crew or whoever else get excited about the work that they're working on, it gets us excited about it. So, but I was still middling because I was afraid. I was afraid that this show was going to be bad, really, really bad, and so beforehand, I was trying to keep my expectation down, and I think that helped me in my overall experience of the show itself.
That's fair, relatable. I think many of us, myself included, when we heard kind of what the synopsis was going to be, there was a lot of like, yeah, okay, it sounds like some made up. That's not real. That can't possibly be real. And then it turns out it was real. So there was a lot of like, ooh, don't know how you feel about that, which was...
Yeah, the internet was... I feel like the internet was kind of unfair. I'm going to be saying that a lot today. But they were unfair with it prior because there wasn't really much information other than that baseline script, which did sound anemic and weird.
Right, yeah.
But... yeah, I was like, I'm not going to say it's not good. I'm not just going to say it's great because I've not seen it. I always give something a chance, no matter what it is.
Yes.
And yeah, so it was, there was a lot of big accounts. There was a lot of people who were like saying a lot of negative stuff about the show before it even came out, which led me to be the kind of on the positive side of bias because I was like, no, I'm not gonna let it be cancelled. In my mind, I'm not gonna let it like go down. I'm gonna give this show a chance.
Yeah, and that's always been our standpoint, really, isn't it? To at least give it a fair shot. Try and put aside that all the feelings of, well, that sounds really weird, but you never know. I mean, we definitely talked about how we had a lot of stuff come out in quick succession. Infinite Darkness, which generally, I mean, it's fair to say, Steve, Kelsey, and we covered that one and didn't find a lot to like about it. And Welcome to Raccoon City was, at the very least, divisive. So there was definitely talk amongst some of us that, this might actually surprise us. Steve, what were your expectations going into this?
Low. I genuinely like... hearing the initial synopsis of the Wesker twins, a part of me just went, "Oh, we're scraping that barrel." But I'm always open to giving things a fair shot. I mean, we did Umbrella Corps on the podcast, guys. If we can go that far, we can get through a Netflix show with really odd tone. I appreciate the marketing. Like before we got in.
Yeah.
Like the aesthetic they seemed to be going for was very akin. It reminded me of like stuff like Utopia and other like Channel 4 drama stuff. Trailers not so much, but the aesthetic they're going for, the yellow and red, and so that was fine. I was like, it's just another spoke in the many, many multiverses of the Resident Evil pantheon, so I'll just give it a go. Whether I like it or not, we'll find out. But I wasn't particularly chomping at the bit for it. I genuinely don't think I am for any of these like TV shows, though. I wasn't particularly jumping up and down for Infinite Darkness or Welcome to Raccoon City either.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys about the posters and the sort of visual design of that. I really like the new logo as well. The trailers for me were interesting in the sense that I was surprised that I was actually a little bit excited about seeing some of the monsters that they were showing us. That was at least something that caught my attention. Kelsey, how are you feeling on the lead up to this?
Yeah, pretty much the same, to be honest. I think, like a lot of people, the initial premise it didn't really blow me away. The history of the showrunner as well and the stuff that he'd done before is not stuff that I was really into. But like James said, I'll never be down on new RE stuff until I see it for the most part. And I think the biggest thing before, in terms of expectations, was the announcement of Lance Reddick, and that was just like that was a huge get as far as I was concerned. And although the premise didn't sound like my own personally preferred route for an RE show, I was perfectly happy to be shown something original. And by the time the show had rolled around and after seeing the trailers and posters and stuff, like you guys have mentioned, my expectations were definitely higher because the production value did look good. And obviously I made that video with the wishes for the show, which I know they were silly because they were just silly wishes. It was just a bit of fun. But one that was kind of that was more serious in that video was I was keen to see, how the script is going to work when it comes to the dialogue and the extended talking scenes, because the point I'd made in that video was that this was the first live action TV show for RE, and so that has always hooked my intrigue and me thinking, what are they going to do here? This has to be semi decent. It can't be 8 hours of because it's a lot there. So I did have a certain expectation for emotion and conversations between characters, because I knew it couldn't all be roaring monsters. So yeah, when I started to watch it, my expectations were sort of warmly in the middle, and I did think it had potential going into it.
All right, so let's talk sort of broadly about a few things: the way the show looks, the way the show feels, and tone, that kind of thing. Steve, you actually already touched on this briefly. You said the show has an odd tone. It struggles, I think, mainly because it's obviously jumping between two timelines, and the fact that one almost has with the teen drama with slight comedy, especially when Lance is doing his thing. Like, Lance has an air, I think it's because he does do comedy and serious stuff, like, in tandem. And so anything that he's in, he can be kind of hilarious, and not in a bad way. Particularly, like, for example, in the principal scene, which I believe is in episode 1, so I think we're good. Yeah.
And, stuff like that. And then the future, it's just grim, miserable, dark. Everyone's like, I'm an extra from a Fallout TV series that doesn't exist yet. It's... And then there's some really kitschy stuff with future Jade talking to the family, and genuinely it's like the future stuff always draws me out, but that might be because I always have an abhorrent dislike of Resident Evil going post-apocalyptic. Yeah, and that whole tonal shift from twee teen drama to the grim darkness of the future and there is only zeros, it's not appealing to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It's a weird one, because I'm just going to go straight out the bat with this, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who have pointed this out before I have. This is not meant to be a criticism. This is meant to be just a statement, and it might sound like a criticism, but this is like the Anderson-verse if it was slowed right down. Sort of the action set pieces were piecemealed out a bit, and without Miller sort of stinking up the place. This is closer in tone to those movies than anything else. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Not necessarily a bad thing. So I didn't get... And I don't think it was going for the tones of the video games. There are definitely touches in the things that it does. But it felt closer to the Anderson stuff, which is why in no way at any point it felt like a horror show to me personally. Again, not a complaint, just an observation. It was kind of... I wouldn't even call it a creepy sort of vibe. It didn't really have anything of that element to it. It was just like a slowed down drama with action parts to it. So in that sense, it's very different to anything we've had before. Kelsey, how did you feel about the tone of the show?
I've put at the top of my notes, it's a tale of two raccoon cities, because you mentioned horror there. I think you can call some of it a horror, and I say that because it does aim for horror in plenty of ways, but it attempts to kind of take that horror very seriously, and then that horror is hindered by how it's just so compartmentalized across the 7 hours. So you have a full-blown horror scene with not enough tension building before it. The monster scenes kind of get dumped on you, and then you're back with the angsty teens and the family drama. And this jumping around is not really something that kind of worked for me. There are moments of okay tension and atmosphere, but tonally, yeah, it's all over the place. And for the reasons that have been mentioned, it's those two timelines. They are universes apart in tone, which is, for me, is the reason the show kind of struggled to retain my interest, because the past timeline is steadily paced conspiracy and mystery, and with little dashes of horror, and some large parts of that did generally work for me, but although it was lacking in some Resident Evil stuff, And then the future timeline, like you say, is just action-led Anderson-verse gore-fest with the iconic monsters. And neither route is objectively bad, but the show is just asking the viewer to watch 2 TV shows in the same episode, which doesn't really allow me to get comfortable and latch on to anything that's happening, beyond like a surface level. So instead of going along for the ride with ups and downs, you're basically dragged backwards and forwards over and over again, which for me just ruined like the settling of the tone and any decent tension building. And I think it possibly would have been better served for me with all the future stuff contained to 1 or 2 episodes or a separate season even, rather than the jumping back and forth. And yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's not that the roots are bad in of themselves, but mashing them together here is one of the show's biggest issues for me. So yeah,
I would agree with that actually, and not to speak too much about the actual content of the episodes because we'll be doing that next time. But when the 2 sort of timelines were most separated, so there is a section later on, I believe it's episode 5 and episode 6, where each episode is devoted to one part of the timeline, and then the next episode is the other part. That's when both excelled more, in my opinion.
Yes.
So maybe that's the way. And again, you learn by doing. I like the concept of the flipping between timelines, but you're right, it did feel a bit like being dragged back and forth a bit. So maybe if they'd have elongated each bit out, it would have landed a little bit more. In terms of the horror aspect, I suppose, thinking about it, episode 1 actually had a couple of bits that made me uncomfortable that they never went back to. Like New Raccoon City, owned by Umbrella, where everything is like pure white, very clinical, almost hysterically so. It's like, I guess that's a little bit weird and uncomfortable. Everything was really white in the sense that all the houses are white, and also specifically, very strangely, they called out, hey, we're in South Africa and we're the only like people of colour. And then they never went back to that. Like, why do they mention that? Like, it's you think, oh, that's quite interesting, and then that doesn't go anywhere. That's a bit weird. But there you go. James, how did you feel about the tone and the split timeline element?
So, I appreciate like you guys saying that, like from your like point of view, because I feel like this show is meant to. It's meant to be for not only us. It's also meant to be for the current generation, and a lot of TV is like this. Like, and I watch a lot of it, so I can keep up, and it doesn't really break me in any way. And when we're talking about tonally shifting, I mean, Resident Evil does that. The game does it all the time. Like, I mean, you're talking about a game where we have to replay it all the time to get to, we're going through different timelines. So that mixed with the current like meta, I guess, with TV series and stuff, it didn't really I didn't really have a problem with it. There were things done which we'll go into the discussions later. There were things done that I didn't like in terms of the direct that from scene to scene that I didn't like. In terms of the swapping of the timelines, it didn't really bother me that much. I was actually invested in both as much because of things that I won't talk about right now. But yeah, is it horror? I don't know. We need to talk about it later because episode 3 is really scary to me.
Okay.
Like it's one of the most. If we're talking horror Resident Evil, it's one of the most Resident Evil like scenes we've seen, like in live action, like or even CG. Like it's a tunnel full of lickers and it's one tunnel full of a giant spider. Like it's really terrifying. And there's really heart-wrenching moments there as well. The acting could have done better, but we'll talk about that later. But like it, that episode, just that whole episode was like pretty scary, especially also with just Umbrella turning up and like being terrifying. But I mean that's only from my point of view though. So but there was a lot of action too. Again, middling with the action. It was okay at some points and then it wasn't in others. But there were some really standouts in it as well, which we'll talk about when we get to episode 4 later on. What can we compare it to? Because I didn't, when I was watching it, I didn't get I get where you're coming from with the Anderson verse stuff, but I didn't really connect it with the Anderson verse much. This is gonna sound weird, and it's purely because of the plot skipping, like, but I got Witcher feels, Netflix Witcher feels. They took some things from The Witcher, like in terms of the time skipping, like, and they didn't do it as well as The Witcher did. Right, but they took that and they went with that. If folks have watched The Witcher here, you know what I'm talking about. I think that's all I can really say. In terms of like the look and tone, I like the overall look and tone, and the feel of the show. There will be little bits that I don't like, but the overall look and tone and feel of the show I liked.
Yeah, I think there's definitely positives in the way that it's looked. It has its own, especially the present day stuff. I thought looked pretty nice. It had its own clear identity. I feel like
they went out with the scenes and locations. Like there were so many. I was expecting. I'm not kidding. I was expecting the show, like when we're going into the future. I was like, okay, we're just gonna skip from this one place to a base, and that is gonna all be from there. And you know, the past timeline, 2022 or present timeline, I guess, was going to be set just in, you know, New Raccoon City, which it kind of was, right? But yeah, I wasn't expecting them to jump all over the place in the future timeline so much. The locations they used were amazing.
So staying sort of similarly about, we talked about tone, but the way that we kind of touched on the way that the show looks there. We talk about the way that it's directed and that kind of thing. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that sort of stuff.
Feels like two different shows. Literally feel, and like, I don't mean that in a dismissive way. It feels like they've took two different scripts and they've put Resident Evil concepts to them to meld them in some kind of viral amalgamation. Like realistically, you can take the 2022 stuff, separate it entirely, call it like, you know, Joy, and then it's its own thing. You take the entire future stuff and let's just say, for sake of argument, call it Zeros, and it's its own thing. And the fact that they've used Resident Evil and characters as a through line to meld them together, despite the fact they do feel like two disparate entities, just with, like, you know, proper nouns in certain places, is surprising. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say they've pulled it off, but the fact that that is a massive tonal shift of two different scripts is, it's something, because they do feel different. Like, the past feels a lot more slower and intrigue-laced, whereas the future feels a lot more bleak and, dare I say, like, riffing on every cliche of the post-apocalypse with, like, you know, Mad Max is a big example, especially with the early stuff in the UK. That feels very different from, like, Lance Reddick quietly trying to figure out what the hell's gone on in Tijuana, and then his kids are running in the house screaming because there's been a fight at school. Sorry, I didn't mean to just get on the pulpit for a second.
No, you're absolutely welcome to do that. It's somewhere buried in my notes, but I mean, to be fair, yes, I complimented the way that the present day stuff looks. It's probably only worth saying that the way that the future stuff, at certain points of it, really could have been, I don't know, pick any zombie show you haven't seen and just assume it's that. If you've never watched The Walking Dead, congratulations. This could be The Walking Dead for all you know. It could be iZombie. I don't know. I've never seen it. That's the thing, though. It's like you watch it and it's like, and I don't want to be that person who goes, doesn't really feel like Resident Evil. Well, cool. It's doing its new contribution to Resident Evil. It's kind of the way you look. But
I mean, it's its own continuity.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I did look at it and be like, if I hadn't seen The Walking Dead, it could be that. And I haven't seen iZombie, so as far as I know, it looks like this. Like, so here's that. My other negative, and I don't want to keep harping on, but I do have a couple of them. But it's in terms of direction. Whilst there was some really good stuff, and I've got some specific examples when we get there, certainly. Over the course of the season, man, they really, really needed to fire and get a new continuity person because it was a big problem. Like, so many scenes, I got distracted by how non-fluid everything was. Characters changing positions, expressions changing, hand placements, moving all over the place. I don't know, it was just something that I just couldn't stop picking up on, but it was very much an issue for me. Kelsey, how did you feel about the sort of direction and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I agree. And before I sort of say a few things, just to jump back to what James said, like the show isn't without horror, and I agree. I think I mentioned that it does aim for horror, and there are definitely bits that are creepy. But like I said, I just think it's all hindered by the structure of the show and the way it jumps backwards and forwards, and the two different shows, like Steve said. But the direction, I mean, first of all, just how the show looks. Yes, the modern day, the present day. Sorry, no, I'm getting confused. The past, because the show is confusing. So the new Raccoon City stuff.
That's the present. That's present day, right? It's 2022.
That's the
present.
It's our present day, but it's not the show's present day. Yeah, it's
what?
Yeah.
Well, again,
the show
present
jumps
of the
ahead.
show is Jade in the future.
Yeah. So anyway, that's
Why
like,
is this confusing? I don't understand.
the new Raccoon City stuff. Yeah, it looks nice, and it's got a uniqueness about it to a certain degree, and then the future stuff is just completely generic, and it's the production value, which I touched on, it is high across the board, but because it's so generic that it just doesn't sit with me, and it doesn't. I'm not sitting there going, wow, I've never seen that before. It's just the same stuff I've seen over and over again, which is disappointing because they clearly had a decent budget, and I think it's just gone to waste. And the continuity thing, you're completely right. There's lots of times when that happens. I mean, I've touched on it a bit later in my notes, but this kind of falls into this. Like the zombies, there's plenty of times when the extras are just kind of ambling around in the background and off to the side of shot, to the point where somebody sort of should have seen that the take was unusable, and it just kept pulling me out of it. And then you look at, we're going to get to CGI in a minute, so not going to jump ahead, but yeah, then some of the other stuff looks really good. So direction wise, there's so much going on that I don't think the director has managed to kind of keep it all in a line. Again, either timeline in itself is not objectively bad, it's just the way it all kind of weaves together doesn't work well enough for me. It looks like The Walking Dead very much, and I think someone in chat, it might have been Choji, mentioned one of the CW shows. It looks better than a CW show easily, and I read one of the reviews after, and somebody said it had Hollyoaks production values, which is just utter bullshit. It
For
doesn't.
someone who's like old, what is a CW show?
So that's like The Flash and
The Vampire
Arrow and
Diaries.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So those network TV superhero shows. This show looks way better than that. But cinematically, there's nothing interesting there. And just to name drop Welcome to Raccoon City, that was infinitely more interesting cinematically in the way it was directed. All right, the script was bad, but we're not going to go over that again. This show, yeah, it's a real mixed bag in that sense, with the direction and how it looks and the tone we've talked about. So I do have some other good things to say later, but yeah, it's just nothing there to really hang on to that sort of had me, jaw wide open and stuff like that, or going, oh, look at that shot and look at that camera move. If you want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, it was just so standard and so average in that sense. So yeah, would have liked a bit more, but it clearly wasn't a cheap show. There's a lot of money on the screen. It just doesn't fit together very well for me.
James, what's your take on the direction and the general look of the show?
Well, first of all, I want to say we got to see an Umbrella Lab before it became a mess. And when I truly mean this, we keep talking about, the stages and everything, they're not being up to scuff or whatever, right? But we got to see an Umbrella Lab before it went to crap. And we never see that. And I got, when I first saw New Raccoon City, I thought, wow, we're seeing, because we know it's coming. The future has told us that. We know it's coming, which I kind of liked. This is going to turn to crap. This is really cool, because in the games we only ever see the lab being a mess, and being rampant with monsters. But if it goes into the future, if it goes into a season 2 and beyond, right, we're going to see it devolve into, a complete, the chaos that we see in the games. Hopefully, I hope it does.
Being fair, James, yeah, you're right on the money, because it looks like you could take that and slam that in the RE engine somewhere and stuff it and say RE2 make or 3 make, and it probably would pass for a NES 2 or NES 3.
Yeah.
Just like the Anderson everything's got an Umbrella logo everywhere thing going about it. But that's not bad. I totally think those labs are really we don't, oddly enough, despite the fact we spent quite a lot of time there, I don't feel like we spend enough time there.
It would have been nice to see them, doing stuff in there, I think, is probably the thing that felt missing. It would be nice to see them actually doing some experimentation and that kind of stuff, I agree. But I agree, though, the lab was cool, and even this totally obnoxious layout of the city being a big octagon,
It was so clearly corporate. That's the thing that just was blown in my face. Like, this is corporate, and I hate it. And I'm meant to hate it because it's Umbrella, And I'll talk about it a bit later, and maybe in part 2 when we do a part 2 of this, right? But I have some feelings in terms of what the show is trying to convey, and I think it's been missed. And I think that's based to writing, and it could be based to direction, right? But I think a few other people have caught it too, and it's just the fact that it's meant to be oppression. It's meant to be oppressive. The whole of New Raccoon City is oppressive. When Jade goes there, first word you hear from her mouth is basically, "Ugh, I hate this." And that's literally what I was thinking. I hate this. This is awful. What's going to happen here? But in terms of continuity, yeah, you're right. There were some odd zombies. There were some strange direction choices in terms of some scenes that I didn't like because they drew away from the quality that is in the show. Because it is like mining for some diamonds in this show sometimes with certain episodes. But yeah, I don't want to add any more because you guys have said enough. But yeah, I agree with the continuity and stuff in terms of the direction from scene to scene. I thought it looked good. I thought every scene looked well in shot. When we saw big wide shots of locations, they looked really great. Especially the very first scene, you see. Well, I think it's 10 or something plus minutes into it. But when you see the whole landscape of London, I thought that was dope. But we've seen that in the trailer. But we see a lot of stuff like that. And I thought, it wasn't bad. I liked it.
Okay, cool. Let's shift on to related, which is the visual effects, the CGI. Obviously, that's going to be a big aspect in the sense that it's Resident Evil. It's got to be monsters in there. So we've got to talk about it. And in general, I think there's quite a lot to talk about in terms of, isn't it really nice that we got more than just zombies and a liquor, which is usually about as far as you get.
Hashtag praise the grub digger.
Right, exactly. And what a thing to kick the show off as well, is to go right out there and just chuck a giant evil, somehow roaring, I don't quite understand how, but sure, evil caterpillar and amongst various other things.
The caterpillar fed on human flesh. This is not an airsoft gun you're going to get in Tokyo Maru. But, sorry.
Steve, how did you feel about the CGI, the visual effects, all that business?
For the big money stuff, obviously for the first 4, it's the Liquor Horde and the Grub Digger, as I have now called it, and therefore is his name. I thought they were fantastic. Generally, I thought it would actually beat out its closest competitor, Welcome to Raccoon City, rather soundly. And dare I say, even 2002's Liquors and Effects, although they clearly, keep them in shadow a lot more than that CGI abomination of back in the day that only looks better when it's practical. But the actual giant grub beast is fantastic. I wish there was more of these unique to this series BOWs out and about showing off. That would have been making it a bit more distinct than, say, The Walking Dead. The only other bad guys that are kind of lame is the Brotherhood of Nod Troopers or the Cylons or whatever the Nod guys are. I mean, the Umbrella Tactical Troops are in the future. They look so stock, generic sci-fi bad guy, it hurts me. And yes. When they fire their guns, it's either they have a faint muzzle flash that affects the environment or literal PNGs of gun flashes. Compared to the CGI flare of the big beasties, seeing PNG gun blasts just made me cringe. And I only saw that on the second viewing before this podcast. So it's good that you could ignore it the first time. But oof, it took me out. Brighton getting shot up by cartoon stock PNGs.
I didn't even see that. That's terrible. Yeah, you're right. You know, the lickers, it's good they didn't overexpose them, so it made them look even cooler because they were all shifting around in the shadows and stuff and gave them a spooky edge of their own.
Very Aliens. It's like the atmosphere processor bit where they're getting taken out, but you don't see it only without like grainy video to blur it. Let's say the final major BOW was my favourite. I think I did that incredibly well. I also didn't expect it. It was really nice. And even the one that was meant to be the final BOW that we didn't see anything of, and we'll talk about that next time, I'm sure. I kind of liked what we saw of it. For the bad stuff, zombies were awful. They looked awful. They moved awful. Everything about them was bad. I didn't like them at all. And you don't go back and watch Welcome to Raccoon City now, trust me, because they look incredible in that film, which made it even worse when you realise how these are just, they're not. I don't know what's wrong with them, but it just doesn't feel. I don't want to go. It's not Resident Evil. It's like, well, it's such a cheap, stupid thing to say, but it didn't. They're not the zeros. It's a different virus. It's
well,
okay, Si.
For sure. All right, they make them the most like boring zombies in the world. Then
the thing that gets me is at close range, when the camera's close to them, they've got makeup on. There's like pustules and stuff. The further in the back, again, this is rewatch problems. The less makeup they have, to the point where there are just some people milling about in dark, dusty, bloodstained
Steve,
clothes.
I saw that the first watch.
I was going to say that the thing that they really don't get right, and which they kind of should have done, is when zombies are when there's a whole like squad of zombies, it looks pretty bad. Like the the lighting that they've done for the zombies makes it look bad, which is wild because they do really well with lighting and like everywhere else in this. Right, but the zombies, when they're in groups, they don't look great.
I mean, Shaun of the Dead was what, 2003, 2004? That had way more convincing zombies than this, and that's a comedy.
Exactly. Kelsey, what do you think of the visual effects?
So on the whole, I do think it is quite good. Going to start with quick, however. And then I do have lots of good things to say. It's a little bit frustrating because one of the early CGI monsters you see after the Gravedigger is the dog, and shot to shot, that sequence is very hit and miss. The lead up I thought was awesome, one of the better parts of the show. I thought great atmosphere, and you kind of knew it was going to be the dog that they were going to break out of the cage. But it's the early going of the show, like when it's behind glass and running, it looks amazing, but any shots of it slowly walking and lumbering around on the table just... Yeah, they were pretty bad. It looked really stuck on, and the model detail and animation was nice, but something just kind of awry with the comp, and it did like a weird little jump scare under the table where it just looked very pasted on, and that took me out of it a bit. But yeah, and the zombies, as you've mentioned, and I kind of touched on it, some of the zombies are they're just really, really bad. Some of the feature zombies are good, but anyway, the liquor sequence did look stunning. Have kind of some qualms with a bit of their behaviour, but visually it was ace. And yeah, are we spoiling on what? I haven't really been clear.
These are all things that have mostly been in the trailers, to be fair.
Well, okay, the one that wasn't in the trailer that's at the very end looked incredible.
Right, big agree.
Yeah, just that shows the level that they could achieve, and not a single part of that looked bad. So yeah, really, really good. Spider looked awesome too. One of the best horror spiders I've seen. Again, it's whatever you want to say about some of the stuff that happens around these sequences and how they're put together and script. Visually, really, really good, really strong. And yeah, there was the zombies. It's a shame that there's some of that really lazy zombie stuff because they're a big selling point, and there's some pretty damning clips online. I don't really like running zombies. I've said that before, but again, I can put that aside. Some of them looked really damn cool. Some of them looked really bad, and yeah, Welcome to Raccoon City. I've mentioned it again. They looked better. And whether or not I liked the concept of Mother Zero, spoiler, I didn't. Her visual effects, practical effects looked awesome too. So you have to give the show points there.
Yeah, for sure.
The effects do largely deliver, and that's Netflix money for you. It's just a shame that some of the stuff around it didn't land as well for me. But it was way better than I was expecting, and yeah, a few ropey moments, but it is a struggle to be too critical of the effects. It's not like top god tier stuff, but it's way above average and pushing very, very good in places.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
James,
CGI spider. Sorry, I was going to say that's probably one of the best uses of CGI and lighting in like a horror setting I've seen like in a good long while, especially when it comes to spiders. I'm not normally one who's terrified of them, but even I was wincing when that thing was scurrying around. It's not there for too long, but they really knew at least how to get arachnophobes on the ceiling.
Yeah. No, totally agree with that. James, what did you think of the CGI?
Hated it. No. No, it was, the dog. So I want to touch on just a small thing, just to back up what KDB said as well. It's whenever that dog moved. Whenever that dog moved with his legs, it looked awful. And like, but I want to retort something. And I think this is based on people's hearing, right? But the thing that, prior to them releasing the dog, the thing that kind of got me into that scene and kept my eyes glued is that I heard a crying child in that box. I didn't hear a dog. I heard something crying or something moaning that was like a humanoid. I didn't hear a dog, which was...
Definitely heard whimpering.
Yeah, like I heard it sounded like something was in pain, but it sounded like a child of some kind. So I was expecting like a devil baby child to come out of that box.
Imagine it.
Right. But it didn't. I was happy to see well, I was happy to see the dog come out, but then immediately when I saw it walk, I was like, oh, why can they never get dogs right?
Oh god, there is an alternate version of this film, this series, where the baby from Village comes out and everyone's raving about it now. Cheers, James.
Yeah, you're welcome, by the way. The other thing I want to bring everyone's attention to is kind of the references that they do, like small little references to like 80s, 90s kind of action horror stuff, like RoboCop, for instance. Right at the beginning, you get like a long 7 to 10 second scene of the face melting from this zombie, which looked really good. Again, just kind of calling out the VFX of the show and how well they've done with it. It looked great. Other than the zombies, like there was also like a scene right at the beginning where, because I agree, as I've said before, the zombies do look kind of pants, not as good as Welcome, but there was a scene that made me really interested, and that was when I felt like I was in West Side Story, but at the same time I was down for it. Because when she puts the rabbit down, or rather it goes like, and then they just all look at it. I expected them all to then burst into song. But at the same time I loved it because it was super cheesy. And it's like, I'll let that go. Another thing, this might be controversial. We'll talk about the spider, because the spider is my favorite, other than something else in part 2. But the spider is my favorite, and it is, I think, the best spider I've seen in any show. Up there. Like even Shelob from
I thought about Shelob too.
From
James.
Return of the King. Shelob looks amazing, but this spider looks even more terrifying. Like, oh, it was so good. Like, and I love spiders, and they weren't cowards. And they put a spider in something to do with RE. And I understand why like shows wouldn't want to put spiders in. A lot of people have arachnophobia, but man, it was so good to see a spider, and it being brutal as well, just ripping that man in half. It was, oh man, that was
cool.
Yeah, I was expecting like a stab in the chest, and that was it. But no, the spider went, no, I'm going all the way up to 11. I'm going to rip this man in half. It was great. And the other kind of big call out was the Queen Zombie. But I feel like if they just spent as much time on the Queen Zombie as they did with all the other zombies, especially in the front row at least, we would have had a much better experience with the zombies, because they didn't feel, how in later REs zombies don't feel, or when you get to a certain point, zombies don't feel like a threat. In this show, the zombies didn't feel like a threat. I never felt. Sure. Yeah, other than the Queen Zombie, I never felt like the zombies were a threat to people, other than being something they navigate around. I think there was one scene that made me go, huh? In episode 4, where I think the kill count for zombies is mostly because people are pushed into them, or they put themselves into stupid situations. Like in episode 4, there was a woman who she came across after going, like, seeing if things were clear. She goes over to the gate, pushes it closed, right, and she got herself killed. Like, but they weren't threatening, like, just to look at. Like, so I wasn't invested in that kill, and I wasn't invested in any of the other kills because all the zombies just look meh.
And now, reading the file Director's Diary from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Happy Smelly, who you can follow on Twitter at smelly_happy.
September 10th, these patients suffer from gangrene and congestion of their blood at first. Then their mind slowly deteriorates. In the end, there is nothing left of their mind. When that happens, even mercy killing seems pointless. After all, they are already dead. This disease is unlike anything I have ever witnessed. Once the patient's mind is gone, they become flesh-hungry monsters and act like wild animals who are on some type of bloodlust. September 18th, another patient has been admitted to the hospital. He is showing symptoms of the first stages of the disease at this point, but I haven't been able to sleep at all these past few days. I refuse to let these patients become zombies. I am not just an ordinary citizen. I am a doctor. Even if I die, my clinical charts will contribute to finding a cure. September 26th, we lost most of the doctors and staff during the battle against the zombie patients. It's impossible to maintain the hospital under these conditions, and I know that it's too late for me. I'm beginning to feel the same itchy and hungry desire that all of my patients felt. It's too late for me.
All right, let's move along to, before we get into breaking down episodes, we've got to talk about characters and sort of performances and that kind of thing. James, let's start with you again, because I feel bad for making you go last every time. What did you think of, I know this is a big question, there's a lot of characters, but generally, any highlights and lowlights for you in terms of the casting and the performance?
Obviously, Lance Reddick is a king.
Yes.
Every dad stare he shot, I felt in my the bottom of my stomach. It's just, it was just that every time I just felt him just look around the corner, I just stare, I was like, oh, I've done something wrong. Sorry, Dad. It was like, and yeah, he did steal it, but there are some like other good, like I feel, and I know I'm going to be disagreed with here, but I feel like Jade and Billie, younger Jade and Billie did a great job. I also feel like 2038, is it 2030? Yeah, 2038 Billie did well too. What was it, 36?
36.
36, yeah. Sorry, 38 is Rose.
Past the future, James.
But yeah, I thought she did well too. But Jade and Billie, I think they were given. I think I'll let this loose now. I think they were given an idea of what these characters should be. I think they ran with it. Billie and Jade aren't meant to be good people. They're not meant to grow into good people. That's what this show is about. And you're not meant to like Jade. And you're also not really meant to like Billie. And throughout the first episode, you get tons of like clues. You hear the word from both Billie and Jade, and once from Simon, I think. You hear, oh wait, Simon is later on. But you hear Jade and Billie say the word psycho like 5-6 times. Or psychotic like 5-6 times. You see them do really unhinged things. Billie like broke a kid's leg. Billie punched somebody in the nose and broke his nose. Like Billie, she does things later on as well that are just wild. Jade beat the crap out of somebody, To
be fair, James, Tammy kind of brought that one on herself, not to be.
And then blamed it on her sister.
Yeah, that is kind of messed up now that I think about it.
These kids are not good. They're not good kids. Like, this show is not a show about who is the hero. Not yet, anyway. Right? And in episode 1, it kind of gives you a pathway. It gives you the clues, like, to see that this is not going to be a hero story. They do weird stuff. They do they break into the HQ of Umbrella. You know, the only thing about because I don't want to take up all the time, but a bad thing that I didn't like about the show. Sorry, my Chrome is going wild. There we go. The thing I didn't like about the show is that at the end of episode 1, they should have done something completely different. Whereas, so the Baxter and the Umbrella, they come to take Jade in the future. And before we're transported to see what happens to Billie, we're told that her sister is alive.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really dumb move.
Yeah.
Like, it totally broke the tension of that entire scene. I legit thought she was dead. Like, at the end. Like, and I was like, I legit thought she was dead. But then we went to the future and Baxter said, your sister's been looking for you. And I was like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, you know,
It undermines a lot.
You could have just said that at the beginning of episode 2.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of stuff to say, but yeah, I'll say little anecdotes as you guys, if I can. But yeah, you guys carry it. You guys carry it. That's like my biggest problem with episode 1.
That's fair, actually. You know, it didn't do great things for me, but I also kind of knew anyway, because we knew that there was a future Billie cast. But if we didn't, or if that was a swerve, you're right. I have my own issues with the ending of episode 1 when we'll get there. I can see where you're coming from in terms of they're not good people. I'm glad you said that. Jade is an arsehole. It's hard to root for her. And Billie is, you know, every teenage emotion at once, which is, okay, fair enough. But it's really hard to care about either of these sort of archetype of characters. Lance Reddick's fun, but I didn't really have anyone to root for in the present day thing, which doesn't really help. I mean, the character I enjoyed most out of everyone was Evelyn, and she's definitely the bad guy. So that was kind of my problem with it. Is I think they overall, most of the cast did pretty well with what they were given. I just feel like what they were given is going to set up to fail, I guess is the term that comes to mind for me. And when we look at the future storyline, adult Jade is just the anti-Alice, because everyone is better than she is, and she constantly screws up and needs saving at every turn, which again doesn't really make me want to root for her all that much. I didn't believe that it's the same character after 14 years. I didn't see anything that connected them personally, even more so when we get to Billie, but that doesn't help because they changed her race, and that was a bit strange. I'm
so glad you said that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be super harsh on it on season 1. For sure. But I didn't particularly care for either of the characters in their present day or future things. But yeah, you're right. We certainly need to call out how Billie changes from like Hawaiian to Korean over the course of 14 years. That seems really weird. Everyone's coming out, you know, doing the it's so woke nonsense, which is absolutely stupid. But it's like, it's almost like it's not woke, because you should have noticed that. Like, surely the actors really should have called that out. And maybe I'm speaking out of term, you know, here, you know, not being a person of colour, but that seems a very strange choice to make. Anyway, that's all of my very negative take on the casting. Also, Irish Umbrella guy, I don't get that people warmed up to him. He was an asshole and he deserved to die. Anyway, Kelsey, what did you think of the casting of the performances?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Billie thing, because it raises question marks about the show's how the casting was done. You know, the actors look nothing like each other. They're not the same race, and it took me out to the show where the point I was doubting if it was actually even supposed to be her. So I don't get it. It's inexcusable.
Season 2 plot twist. It may not be. You know.
I mean,
but they've got the same hairstyles.
Yeah.
Come on.
Like, if that's
Maybe
the case, like, it's different.
Huh?
Yeah, I feel that that's also dumb, but I'm glad we touched on that, because I think that can't be let slide. Anyway, the 2 young actors, I think they did a good job. I mean, I wasn't really a fan of them as characters either. James makes a really great point about them. You're not supposed to like them. But then, what you've said, Si, then there's nobody to like in the show, which is not good, because you need to have someone to root for. And But the actors themselves, I thought they had really good chemistry, particularly in episode 5, where they basically play Resident Evil in the house.
Yeah.
And then, but then their older counterparts, the less said about older Billie, the better. She kind of gives the "what did you expect" attitude, and it comes off as like a spoiled brat rather than someone who went through all the trauma that we've seen in the past. So yeah, I'll leave it there for her. Future Jade, the actor Ella, I think she's a great actor. Huge presence. I could see her being a big action star. You know, she could play Tomb Raider or be in a Marvel movie or Mission Impossible or something like that.
Yes, please.
So yeah, so she was great and showed great range. But the caveat is, I also wasn't crazy about her character because she's a complete arsehole, and she made multiple utterly stupid decisions throughout, you know, the episodes, and we'll touch on a few in a bit. Baxter, yeah, what's this? What are these defenders about? He's a murderer. He's horrible and evil, and he deserved to die. Yeah, the actor again, great energy, I suppose, but he just didn't have a meaningful character to play. Simon, I'm going to skip Simon and get to my two highlights, who are Lance Reddick and Paula Nunez. Is it Paula? Sorry, probably I'm saying it wrong. Who, you know, Nunez, I thought she knocked out of the park with what she had. You get many kind of, you know, boss women characters written so badly that nothing can save them, even a great actor. But here, even though I do have a few issues with some of the writing, I think for the first time in a long time with the TV show, this type of character captivated me. She felt like a threat, and especially in that past, you know, setting stuff. And she sort of, you know, this was Simmons level, you know, villain, but with way more charisma. She's got an edge to her and has obviously that brilliantly striking face with her big smile, and performance-wise, great delivery. And as absolutely mental as that moment is in later in the series, she does show some humanity, even though it's overruled by kind of her need for power. You know, she's not smiling when she does that. She's very upset. It is jarring to see her completely emasculated in the future. And I'd rather we got there eventually than them just pulling the rug out from us. That being said, I love the mind control scene, and kudos to her for throwing herself into.
She did an incredible job.
Yeah, loved it. And people are sort of using that scene out of context to slate the show, which is kind of sad, really. But anyway, last but not least, Lance Reddick carries the show. As much as I enjoyed other bits here and there, I think if Lance Reddick wasn't in the show, I'm not sure I would have made it to the end. He is one of the big reasons to keep watching, and the range he shows, the intrigue, and then the absolute death look that he can give, like James mentioned. Yeah, he's warm and charming while also being mysterious and terrifying, and absolutely perfect casting with him. First class performance. I'll touch on some of my favourite moments in a bit, but yeah, if there's one reason to watch the show, it's him, as far as I'm concerned.
Steve, what do you feel about the cast and their performances?
Generally, they're a bit mid. Like, not in a bad way, not in a good way. They're a bit mid. You know, there are exceptions. You know, Paula Nunez. Like, a lot of people seem to be going, "Oh, they're a generic girl boss lady." I'm like, this is a Resident Evil villain who has a motivation, a plan, and a character about them more than just the world will burn in an inferno of hate. That's her quote-unquote father.
Yeah.
You know? So, give them some frigging credit, all right? You know, their plan is dollar signs, money, and control. And that's a lot more in-depth than, like, you know, the entire world will be infected with Ouroboros. It's impressive that this character that's getting slated actually has motivation and stuff beyond the usual Resident Evil stock. It annoys me. And obviously, Lance Reddick, like, you know, controversial take maybe. I feel like if they ever have to go down the remake of a Resident Evil route, let's let him have Wesker wholesale.
Please. Yes.
You know, I reckon that would be great if he leads the Stars team into a mansion at some point. He is that good as Wesker in this series. Like, you know, you could be falling asleep trying to get through this. The second he's on screen, you're awake, you're paying attention, and he's doing something awesome. Even if it is injecting himself in the neck or catching a rat in the tub. Like, it's pretty good. The teen actors, generally, I didn't have any problem with. I especially love Billy's, before it's completely ruined, I love the itchy tasty stuff going on. Like, where they're meant to be, at the start at least, the more meek of the two sisters and trying to keep a lid on their quote-unquote psycho tendencies as they're slowly losing it. I actually thought that was really well portrayed. Like, as a confused kid losing the mind. It gets ruined. You know, spoilers for later episodes. It gets ruined and completely peed all over. But those bits where it's not ruined, pretty good. Jade in both timelines is fine. Like, for me, they are quote-unquote central protagonist, or at least I think they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And they're fine. They're just fine. I think the lady playing Jade in the future, her name is kind of jumping out of my head, I'm sorry. But she's also going to be the main protagonist in Forspoken, so it looks like her career's on the up and up, just saying. I know we're talking about that. That's the PlayStation exclusive video game sorceress lady out of time thing.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll bounce back from this if this goes completely south.
Cool.
Future Billy can go jump in a skip. They feel like they literally fell out the final chapter of Resident Evil Anderson-verse stuff. That's boring. That is just...
Yeah.
Alright, now, the spoilers for part 2 of the podcast, that's as much as you're getting, but she's crap. You know, not beating around the bush, she's crap. Baxter is pain. The one quote-unquote interesting moment is them murdering things to Jamiroquai, and I think the only reason I like that is because the missus loves Jamiroquai, so I know the song fairly well, you know. He's just an insufferable the entire time he's on screen. And then there's Simon. Moving on. You know, so I think I've gone through the entire gamut of characters, and generally speaking, yeah, anyone who's talking smack about Evelyn Marcus, which I think is a clever term to refer to both the front and back end of Resident Evil at present, and Albert Wesker, yeah, those two are the saving graces by far. I'm sorry for my 2-minute tirade about characters, but yeah, generally speaking, who is Simon and why do we care?
Oh, he's all right.
He's there's a class in Bloodborne called Milk Toast, right? And they have more character than Simon
Leave
does.
Simon alone.
Listen, he literally does the hacker I'm in twice in this show. Like,
Okay.
I could not believe
sorry.
it.
Incredible.
Yeah, because Resident Evil doesn't have that, you know.
Yes, it'd be nice to move past those things.
And maybe I just feel like I wished I got to know him better. Like, you know, because he's just some kid, and he's somehow principal to the plot, but not.
Listen, everybody knew a kid who could do that at school. I did. I knew a kid who could do that. His name wasn't Simon, but I knew a kid.
Generic boy who's got a crush on a girl is also Hacker Man. The end.
Yeah, he
And
just
also
wasn't
related
cast
to the
well.
bad guy. That's
Oh
good.
yeah. See,
Yeah,
that was a good
yeah.
twist. I thought that was a really good twist. Where like, oh yeah, hi mom, and like, ah!
He spoke at the same sort of decibel the entire show, and I don't think his eyebrows raised. I don't think I'm not sure he even blinked, to be honest.
Oh Christ.
Oh Christ. Okay, all right. Let's jump
Can't believe
into.
this slander.
Yep.
How did he break past Umbrella's firewall?
Because he's smart. He's Simon the Smart.
Evelyn probably let him. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Get some street cred.
Yeah.
Spoilers, Jane. I'm kidding.
All right, let's get into a bit of an episodic breakdown. I don't know if everyone's notes are any more well constructed than mine. A very slapdash
No.
of just I literally wrote things as and I've only seen the show through once, so they are very contextless. So mine are going to be all over the place when we go into this. But we are going to go through episode 1 through to episode 4. Steve, what
Highlights
you?
and lowlights, I guess.
Yeah, Steve, why don't you kick us off with your thoughts on Welcome to New Raccoon City? What are the things you liked about the first episode? What are the things you didn't like about the first episode?
Panically scrambles and grabs notes. So, the first note I have about episode 1 is god-awful CGI fire. so we've skipped a few bits. I believe what I was talking about was the act of, like, she flubs trying to investigate some zeros at the start, doesn't she? and then some PNGs of fire get sprayed out of these weird antennas around a camp, and then we get a practical shot of a face melt, so it's pretty good. Sorry, what was the question again? My notes seem to have set me astray.
Good things and bad things about episode 1.
Oh, right, okay, good thing. Setting up the actual the familial cast, the stuff I was most apprehensive about, I thought was actually rather strong. There are bamboozling points about the fact that Umbrella have a 30-minute out arrival time for a disaster at their unmanned facility late at night. Literally everyone goes home, which can be broken into by 2 teenagers and a voice message.
Yep.
So there were some things that just puzzled me. I feel like one of them CinemaSins heads, or those right-wing types who just have a PNG of a bear in a suit complaining right now. There are things I like about this show. I want to say that up front. But yeah, the way it builds up, the first episode is very rough. Basically, you have Jade in the future who's trying to investigate the Zeros, completely bottles it and gets attacked by a giant grub monster. And then she's cut out of it, and you flash back to the past, and the kids are just annoying for a bit. So it takes a little while for the first episode to actually kick off, if that makes any sense. So someone help me out here, because I'm feeling like I'm just spinning the wheels. Ow, my headphones.
All right, well, I'll do some notes. I don't have anything on that opening, to be fair. It wasn't.
It's very 28 Days Later, isn't it? Trying to be that bridge shot.
Absolutely, it is. I think it did pretty well, which is why I don't have anything written about it. It wasn't bad by any means. And of course, what we call it, the Grubkeeper. What?
The Grubkeeper.
Now we are.
I thought that was awesome. Even in the the present day stuff, I liked Jade and Billie's introductions and interactions and that kind of thing. Lance basically talking to himself in the car. But I thought the sisters talking was quite good. And then at one point in the episode, we get a bit of a tease of how they were made, that they're twins, but they have different mothers. I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. We've got a tease already, so that's cool. Right from the off, of course, we haven't mentioned it yet, but the soundtrack's great. The use of music's really, really good. Overall, very modern, but not in a try-hard kind of way, except maybe the Billie Eilish stuff, which was a little bit okay, I got no issue with Billie Eilish, but the fact that you have a character called Billie who looks like Billie Eilish and you're playing Billie Eilish music, it's yeah, I get it. But overall, the soundtrack was really good and really well used. The green herb shirt in the cafeteria, that was nice. Obviously, this episode features Lance Reddick doing his very first Wesker moment of sort of lording his position over somebody in the principal's office.
Oh God, that was such a scene.
Which was, absolutely one of the best bits of the episode. That, and I do think the Cerberus showdown at the end kind of saved it outright completely. The Anderson love came strong, though, certainly. The fact that there's that dude is called something Isaacs or whatever, I was like, okay.
Noticed that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun nod. And, our business is life itself. It's okay, yep, there's some more Anderson stuff. Other than that, most of the stuff I've really covered. I immediately didn't like Jade. I immediately didn't like the way the zombies moved. And the one I mentioned, I was going to get to this earlier, is it's hard to believe Billie Wesker is dead, not because they tell you that she's alive, but because Albert Wesker is alive. I was like, well, he magically came back from the dead, so why do we care that she's been bitten by a dog? Is that how we're going to understand how he's back from the dead? Has she got cloned? Is she going to get cloned? Obviously, they went a completely different route with it, which I think is kind of meh. My idea in my head was way more interesting to me, that we were going to get immediately into trying to reconstruct her. Maybe not, I wasn't really on the cloning thought process, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then the next episode, they immediately just go, nah, never mind, she's all right. So
she's not dead, she's just bit.
Yeah, she's just bit. It was a big cliffhanger for nothing. James, what are your highlights and lowlights of the first episode?
I have many, Si.
Good.
So the first scene we see, other than Jade waking up, is her walking into London, and she is in a tent, and she has a discussion with her family. And at this point, it's like, oh, in my head I'm going, they look to be in like some place that's completely safe. Where the heck are they? Why is Jade out here? So that immediately intrigued me about what that would entail in the future. I really like that. After that scene, she like starts to carry on with her laboratory testing, and she sprays herself with a bottle at the start. They put it in frame. They put the bottle in frame. She picks it up and then she sprays herself. At this point, I think she was very close to some kind of breakthrough, which we learn about later on. Which we'll go on about like later on in part 2. But she mentions in episode 2 later on that the team mutates. Oh wait, it's the end of episode 1, I think, actually. The stronger their sense of smell is the team mutates, and then when it mutates, the stronger their smell gets. So I was just thinking this is kind of cool detail, because it would make sense to try and mask yourself with a smell, which also leads to her further experiments later on. So she had like a better idea of how it all worked. She just needed that one thing, that key thing. So I thought that was kind of cool, because it was like foreshadowing what would happen in the future, and it happened right at the beginning of the show. So it's kind of cool. The running zombies I didn't really like very much, but at the same time, and they didn't feel very. And it's the first time and probably last time you hear me say this, but didn't feel like RE zombies.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is set in the future, where the mutation could have caused the speed that they go at, and like metabolize them or whatever.
They're Crimson Zeros.
You can use any kind of pseudoscience-y crap in Resident Evil universes. Again, the melting faces was pretty dope. The evil caterpillar was awesome, and I loved the swift neck turn. Is almost neck breaking. Just before the caterpillar, was it Grub Monster?
Grubkeeper.
The Grubkeeper. Just as it's going to strike at Jade, and we just switch to New Raccoon City and Billie Eilish's Oxytocin. I loved it. I love that switch. It was really awesome to me. And I think the thing that intrigued me so much, the thing that was peak intrigued me about the show, is that I knew Wesker wasn't going to be we all knew that Wesker wasn't going to be the Wesker we knew. Right? Wasn't because we'd heard him and we're like, but the thing that made me more intrigued, I was like, where's it gonna go? Why is he like this? Because you can't just blatantly make a character like this, which is named Albert Wesker, and not make him like the Wesker we knew. Right? I just thought it was really intriguing. I liked what they did. I'm not going to mention the Z word. You know what I'm talking about. I also they speak about the kids. They speak about like their previous life and stuff, and I mentioned it earlier on, but Billie mentions that, well, rather Jade mentions to Billie, that she's stronger than she knows she is, and and then she says that she broke a kid's leg and stuff, and you're starting to see, which is something else I'm going to touch on several times. You're starting to see that these kids have some kind of superhuman strength in some way. And then that makes me intrigued even more, because we hear that Wesker is their father/stepfather. So why are they connected in this way? And it constantly, like, questions were popping up in my head every time there'd be a scene. And then it was actually Steve. I think it was Ark actually who mentioned. I had to watch it again. But the Zeros thing, I don't like the Zeros. I don't like it. I don't like the Hollywood or whoever else like constantly changing the name of zombies. But at the same time, Jade calls them the Zero strain zombies, right?
Yeah.
Zero strain carriers, because they can't hear and they can't see. They can only smell.
Yeah. So it makes sense thematically why she would call them Zeros and everybody else call them Zeros, because they'd be different from other zombies. That's another reason why, like, they might be different. Again, I mentioned like Lance Henriksen's dad looks are amazing. Just Jade being annoying and ignoring Billie. Every scene with Jade and Billie was just Jade ignoring Billie, and I was like, when I first started, I was like, why the heck are you doing this? And then when I got to like episode 4 and 5, I was like, okay, I know why, which is what I just mentioned. Yeah, and I've already mentioned the locations and stuff, and I've already mentioned the like the ending of the show, which I both liked and disliked because of the just them completely cutting the tension. But yeah, you also one last thing is that I mentioned earlier about just like people not being, you're not meant to like these people, but that doesn't mean you can't still, push for them. Like I did want Billie to stand up for herself. I did want Wesker to come out of his shell and be an ounce of the Wesker that we knew, and we got that in the principal's office. There's a lot of these little scenes that you see that are just kind of breadcrumb through the show, that kind of give you an idea of, well, it kind of give you something to grasp on, so you can kind of give these characters a push, and kind of get behind them. But then they do something crappy, and then you're reminded, oh, they're not nice people. And the first time you see that with Billie, the first time you see that is with Jade, and that's when she beats up, is it Tammy?
Yeah, I think so.
Beats up Tammy, and then blames it on her sister. And then when Billie gets burritoed in the face, and you see Billie walk off, and you see her, steaming basically away, right? And I was like, I'm kind of getting the measure of these kids now and what they are. Overall, first episode, I liked it. It did draw me in. I just didn't like the end of it as much as it could have been. It could have been much better.
There is some things there, but I'm gonna loop back round to something in a moment. But Kelsey, I'm just gonna let you, say your piece on episode 1. What's your favourites and least favourite things?
Yeah, just a few little bits, really. I think it does set up some good questions. I think the thing James is talking about the superhuman powers and stuff, I don't think that's supposed to be a secret. I'm not really crazy about it, but I sort of thought, well, surely this might be the case to some degree. But yeah, the episode starts okay, and there's bits across it that I did really like. I think the footage of Tijuana is really cool and creepy, and things like that I used a few times across the series, and I thought they were all really good. The introduction of the characters, I think it sets them all up really well. There's nothing to really hugely dislike apart from the personal taste things, like we've mentioned, the zeros and the running zombies. It's like me just kind of going, oh really? But I know that doesn't necessarily make it a really bad show. It's just, I would have preferred something different, but that's fine. That's just personal preference thing. But then, there was good stuff. The scene in the principal office is just, it was in that. I could not take my eyes off Lance Reddick. And that. It was so good. And so this is what I mean. If you start to drift, hopefully he brings you back in with things like that. A few other little bits. I loved the music when Billie first sees the rabbits, and then it comes back when they break into the lab as well. We've mentioned the soundtrack a little bit in some of the needle drops. They're a bit hit and miss. I wasn't as big a fan of the Jamiroquai one, but anyway, the actual soundtrack music was awesome with breaking into the lab. There's quite a few good one-liners. Our dad that wears socks to the beach. I'm going to be great at heroin. Like, there's just little things like that which, I don't know, I kind of liked them, and it did. Levity is short in kind of numbers on this show, and not to jump ahead, but there's a character or a sub character that appears later that I think should have been brought in sooner, because they bring a lot of levity and they should have come in sooner. The show is desperately in need of more levity, because it's very, very serious. The sets are great, big and detailed. Talked about the dog set piece. Oh, the dog was killed the same way as Welcome to Raccoon City, the fire extinguisher to the face, which I like to think was a reference just for me. But there was. I kind of thought, they weren't lying about the family drama thing, but I didn't hate it. I just thought episode 1 was a bit of a mixed bag. James, when you said Z word, do you mean Zootopia?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's another thing that people online are using out of context to slate the show, and it's just nonsense, because in context it's perfectly fine. It's Jade being a smart ass and whatever. So I just wanted to point that out. So good things and not so good things. Love, obviously, the Grubkeeper. We like him. But The shot where Jade's running away is really badly comped as well, and that took me out of it. But then it's fine after. It's just one shot, and this is what I meant earlier, where some of it is so incredible, and then there's just one shot that's really bad, and I think, what are you doing? Yeah.
I get what you mean, because there was when she's running away, there was one bit. Actually, I put it in my notes. She dives underneath dives underneath the train, and then she just waits there.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you not scrambling deeper underneath the train? What are you doing?
Yeah, the character makes a few dumb decisions. Obviously, the jump at the end of the episode as well. I was like, why are you doing this? Like, does she know she's got superhuman powers at this stage? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, up and down for episode 1. I was ready for episode 2 at the end. I wasn't switching off like I know some people did.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with that one. It's a mixed bag is definitely the way to put it, and I was definitely interested to see more. There was enough teasers and stuff hanging there where I was like, okay, I need to know a little bit more about this. James, you said in your sort of breakdown there about the running zombies and how maybe they've learnt to run in the time since. Interesting theory. That totally works.
Because we know they're different zombies, right?
That's the thing.
Now too.
Like, they are totally different zombies because, like, who's to say they weren't running in original Raccoon City? Because it's a completely different. This show is not canon, is what I'm getting to. This. This is its own universe, and that's the way we need to look at it. That's the best way to look at it, as far as I'm concerned.
Andrew Dabb said it was canon, and therefore I need to throw my toys out of the pram on every social media platform, on every single post about this show, every moment of my life.
Can I posit something? Like, would you? It is its own universe, because there's some things that don't make sense. Umbrella being one of them, right? But they had to use Umbrella because if they used any other, can you imagine?
They could have got away with dry cell, I think. But
no. If they're in the writers' room, right? Like, right, we need an organization. We've got all these organizations here, right? We're relaunching. Like a live-action TV... Well, we're launching a fresh live-action TV series. Like, what organization do we use? We've got all of these, right? Everyone says Tricell, folks say Blue Umbrella, folks say BSAA, whatever else. No, that doesn't work. We have to do Umbrella. We have to. Like, because if they didn't, people would have cried even more. Why is Umbrella not being used? People would have been upset more. And the other thing I wanted to posit as well is that this is an alternate universe. This is like not canon, right? But would everybody here be okay with them using like they have with this show, using little bits from the games to further their own alternate universe?
It's funny, Steve making a joke about complaining about it not being canon, even though we were told it was canon. At least I've done that privately in my own private life. But regardless, like it was one of those things when I you can't unknow that information that we've been told that this is meant to be canon with the games, when it very clearly, James, as you have just said, it can't be. It does not fit. But if they were more forthright with it and said it's not canon. It's its own. Don't even have to say that. It's its own alternate universe, but it is informed by some of the stuff in the games. I'm perfectly happy with stuff to be the same as it is in the games. I'm perfectly happy to change some of the stuff in the game. It's just for some reason about the fact they said that. It's like it got stuck in my head, and through watching this, I had to remind myself stop caring about these little inconsistencies. It's not canon. It's its own thing. Let it be its own thing. It'll be better for it. And in a way it is, because if you're trying to force it to fit, whether you are in your own head trying to force it to fit or you are Andrew Dabb trying to force it to fit, you're better letting it do its own thing. And we're jumping way out of order here, but there's recent news story came out that he'd love to use Lady D, and people were like, well, how would that fit? It's like, you can fit however the hell you want. It doesn't matter, does it?
It's fiction.
She can be an Umbrella employee, like whatever. It doesn't matter.
That's the wild thing. That's the thing that's kind of throwing me off every time I see these complaints. It's like we're dealing with pseudoscience here, folks. You can literally.
There is that as well.
And Lady D could literally be Wesker's mom. It wouldn't matter.
You can it's storytelling with a pseudoscience setting. Like you can do anything with it. It's. You can do and that's literally what they do. That's what Capcom do. They do anything with it. Like there are some things that really don't make freaking sense in our universe, but we all eat it up because it's fun. The game's hella fun.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it comes down to when you were saying about it. Of course they use the Umbrella logo. Of course they use Raccoon City. They're going to do this every time. That's just the way it is. So it's the logo, it's the location as far as everyone is concerned. It's just the way it's going to be. So you just need to disconnect from that. And in this universe, Raccoon City happened, and then big question marks until this. We don't know. You know, there all the stuff after that, other than a volcano apparently, which was mentioned. Stuff like that. That's fine. You know, neat references. But it's clearly not reflective of that entire universe, and it doesn't need to be, unless it suddenly starts claiming that it is and proving that it is, you know, rather than...
Yeah, like if that's the thing that I would track back and I'd be like, no, you can't do this. You can't just change the...
Well, there's massive things. They can't suddenly go, oh yeah, there was a big bioterrorism incident in China in 2012 or whatever, and everyone knows about monsters, because this whole season of the show has proven that, you know. But they could absolutely insert... Be like, oh, this is canon. Even we've not mentioned this character, but they do exist in this universe. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. It doesn't conflict with anything, you know.
Yeah, I think that's why they've done the future thing. It's because they have a lot to work with. They have a lot of time to work with, right? And they've also given like Capcom options. They never will, right? But they've given them options if they do want to, like maybe like work hand in hand in the future with something, not in terms of a canon thing, but in terms of just making them connected in like a small way. So like you got your people who enjoy the show, you got your people who enjoy, you know, the game, because I feel that's what Paul W.S. Anderson was trying to do with the original movies, but they didn't work because they were so, well, crap. So
in 10 years, when Resistance 2 finally comes out, there will be a character called Jade, who is completely not Jade Wesker from the show, but she'll still unlock a red jumpsuit, much like the Resistance outfit for Jill. Yeah. You know, that'll totally be it, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I could see that.
Sorry.
To be honest. Yeah, all right, sorry, we got very sidetracked there.
Everybody.
It was a conversation that obviously was going to happen at some point. So let's jump into episode 2 in that case. Devil You Know. Kelsey, what are your highlights, lowlights for episode 2?
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad pubs are still around after the apocalypse.
Because we'll need them.
That's a really comforting thought. Yeah, the first 2 opening scenes are quite good. You've got Wesker helping with the injury and future Jade being attacked by the zombies, with the new character just dying straight away.
Yeah.
But I liked that. It's like, yeah, the zombies are dangerous. They do kill people. Then you've got Evelyn's intro. I wrote here on my notes, a better Wesker than Wesker. I was probably too hyped there when I wrote that. But yeah, I think she's introduced really well. A big highlight for this episode, there's lots that happen. I'm not going to go over everything, but I did like, this was one of the future scenes, with Barry, but not Barry Burton, being chained up in the bathroom. You know, this is pace slowing down. It's an intimate scene. Jade's... God, what did she need to get? I think she had to get a
pocketbook.
To get a key. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, and just the effects were good, and just the way it was kind of all directed, and it was very enclosed. She looked kind of silly when she sort of armoured up with all the kitchen stuff, but again, that's levity
right.
that the show was lacking in, and I liked that. So yeah, it was a good scene, and I think... after episode 1, where it was kind of a mixed bag, I was watching episode 2, and there was nothing, again, huge, but there's more character introductions, and there's a few things that I did like. So I certainly wasn't being turned off by the show. And yeah, there was stuff that was keeping my interest. And I think as I mentioned, Wesker helping with the injury, that's the dialogue scenes that I was talking about in the very beginning. Like, the dialogue is up and down, but there are some good scenes, and I liked it. You know, I was along for the family drama ride at that point. This is one of the episodes that has the "I'm in hacker" line, which I did not like. Yeah, I like the scene with Pablo the dog barking at Jade. It's a bit tropey, but because the dog is so small, there's always something funny about a little yappy dog going absolutely nuts, and they do it like 4 times. But yeah, the rat looked cool as well, very foreboding and referencing the games. So, yeah, this was so far so okay, I thought, by episode 2.
My first positive note on this one actually was I find myself a bit more invested at this point with the parts like the conspiracy element. I was very interested to see what their sort of take on what was going on behind the scenes with Umbrella. And obviously at this point my brain was still trying to wonder if this was going to fit, so I was like, oh, they're going to try and explain why Umbrella is still around. But either way, it was still interesting. And Billie's infection, despite the fact that, as I said before, I would have preferred them to regrow her or something, but I was interested in it. I also like the way some parts of that were shot. You know, she gets looking. You talked about staring in the mirror. This is one of the first ones, but she goes and looks and her gums are bleeding. I thought that was really well shot, that whole section. The Barry bit was just fun zombie movie schlock, really. It's not original, but it was decent. As you say, it had some fun to it. It was its own, like, I don't know, its own little encapsulated moment. It does have some issues in the fact that from here on out, especially, Jade likes to tell everyone how stupid zombies are. But this zombie, handcuffed to a bit of piping, was clever enough to rip his own hand off so that he could get to her, and was like, well, that's, you say zero intelligence, but he at least figured out that he could probably get to her if he pulled his own hand out of his arm. So, you know, whatever. But it was dumb fun. I enjoyed that. Other than that, my only negatives were, and it's not even really a negative, but the fact that Jade has very clearly been made to be indestructible already. She's done these 2 massive falls and survived, and obviously that's kind of alluding to, you know, her special blood and stuff, I guess. But it was a little bit like, okay, we're getting a little bit Alice direction over here. And Wesker, I just wanted more. I needed to know more about who he was, why he was there, why did he care about pharmaceuticals all of a sudden, why is he alive? You know, they really like to leave you hanging on that one when you know that he's meant to be dead. So that frustrated me, but not necessarily in a bad way, I guess. James, highlights, lowlights, episode 2.
Both of you spoke about the mirror scene. It's literally a reference to Remake 3.
Oh, yeah, that happens. That happens in one of the later scenes, doesn't it? Where she actually gets to see herself all.
Right, I thought that's what we're talking about, but
no, I think that comes later.
That's like episode 4.
Oh, okay, good. But I love that reference anyway. But yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so out of all the episodes, other than another episode in part 2, this is probably my weakest episode. Other than the ending, and it was purely because of the Melinda scene. It was Melinda is the lady with the cats. Like, Melinda, she was a bad actor. Like, she was, like, it was painful to watch her try to act on the screen. She was trying to, and later on she tries to hide from Baxter something as well. And I'm like, are you kidding me? She's doing the looks to the side thing. I just, it really threw me out. I loved Jade in that scene, but, you know, like you guys have said, the pacing, it didn't need to be there. She could have got the pocketbook from literally anywhere. The Barry thing felt like bait. The zombie in the bathroom looked great, and I thought that was a really good kind of callback to like, whenever there's a bathroom or a toilet room in an RE game, it's always going to go bad. Like, there's always something that's going to go bad, and yeah, it almost went bad in the series. So I like that kind of callback there to it. But that's all I'm going to say on that. I didn't like it. Bad pacing, bad acting. But Jade saying the cat thing super effed up, really funny. Really made me laugh. Cats carry disease. What, Melinda? What are you talking about? Like, what does it mean? Like, I didn't understand that at all. So now I just choose to believe that scene wasn't in this episode, because otherwise this episode was all right. Like, we got to hear a lot. I'm not going to talk about the beginning because that's also super negative, where, like, there was some pointless tension for tension's sake, where he runs into, like, a pointed gate for some reason. Like, even though he just saved her, useless, pointless. But Evelyn Marcus was, we see her and she's amazing, and she says one line that made my ears go up. She says to Albert, "Just like the old days." Right? And in the first episode she says something similar as well. So is Evelyn a clone of James, or does she have their memories, or is, like, she trying to lay claim to what her father did? This is theory, by the way. It's not in later episodes. It's just that, Yeah, I'm just because she kind of alludes twice, and then a little bit later on as well, about what her and Albert used to do. So, and we know she's not like of sound mind, so
She's actually made of leeches. It's not too far-fetched considering this franchise.
right. And there's also I like, and I'm going to talk about this in part 2 because there's one particular thing I think Luigi, who isn't in here right now, but Luigi really liked because I said it to them. But I really like the subtle nods that Jade's kid is also a superhuman being. In this episode, like Billie and Jade, with her like reading through Wrinkle in Time, all the Shakespeare, ballet, later on piano lessons. Like she's a genius. And then we learn later to the end that she's a little bit more. But right, yeah. And then there's the I really like the shot with the pub Perseverance Tavern, with the Dover Cliffs. Really thematic. I love that. In fact, I want to use that in our D&D one shot at one point, like just as a title because it looks amazing. Yeah. And
it was a nice surprise as well. I didn't expect the show to go that way, so it was really cool.
It's funny because we were talking recently about like I didn't expect them to spend much time in England, but they spent quite a bit in England. And we were talking recently about RE being in England and what it would be like. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. Another thing I picked up is that if you read the Tijuana incident report, that was also started by rats.
Nice.
They mentioned the Latin name for it, which I think it's Ratarcus N something. So yeah, it's basically a repeat. Oh yeah, I put it here actually. Rattus norvegicus. Or the brown rat, the common brown rat. I just thought it was kind of an interesting little snippet. And I both loved and hated the ending at the same time because hate is a strong word, but disliked. There was a bit where the Umbrella they chased everybody into the tunnel basically, and the Umbrella says, "Halt! Do not resist," and then proceed to shoot everyone, which I also thought was a RoboCop reference. So I think they like RoboCop. But yeah, then the ending with the ending of this episode with the rats, with the rat. The music also for this scene was awesome. Which I can't remember the title of it right now, but where we see kind of a foreshadow that the rats could be the spread because we keep hearing about it. At the end of this episode was really good tension building. They did it well at the end of this one.
Steve, positives and negatives, episode 2.
I thought it started really strong. I mean, we seem to be glazing over the fact that the start of this episode is when Lance enters the picture in the lab to see what's going on with Billie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously he walks in, immediately covers himself in blood and tells them to get out. They're confused, and he's been all like, yeah, jump the fence and bugger off. What? Dad? No, go. And very un-dad-like, and more Wesker-like in that particular moment, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Very American Psycho, lathering himself up. Strangely, half the blood he's smeared on himself disappears by the time Evelyn turns up, but I'll let that slide. The stuff in the future, Steve, the future, it looks like the past because it's all run down. Yeah, boring. The English stuff, the stuff set in England at this point is still not grabbing me. Like, Melinda is just a cat lady who, like James has said, isn't the most compellingly acted. They feel like they fell in from, like, EastEnders or something. And surrounded by zombies. Jade actually, I think, is a standout in that scene as a character for saying, you know, they're going to get out and he kills you. That is what's going to happen. And then she's still surprised when Jade has to kill him to save her life. It's rubbish. Baxter exists. I don't like him. I don't think anyone does, except for that one bit with Jamiroquai, but I didn't like that. Yeah. Overall, Evelyn's introduction to the scene and the fact that she gives off an energy that she knows exactly what has happened, but she doesn't want to say outright. At least that's the way it seems to come across to me, especially in episode 2. Mm-hmm. And then my other notes basically say something along the lines of, itchy tasty stuff looks like it's getting really good. So I'm guessing at that point, this is when her first inclinations of hallucinations start, which I generally did enjoy. Yeah. I'm not the most sophisticated at actually commentating on shows, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you've noticed. There's not really much action in this one besides the future zombie stuff and, dressing up dressing up like them from Stranger Things with the.
There's a lot of character introduction in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
alright,
it's-
because episode 3 is a bit more of a pick-up on that, I think.
Yeah. But overall, the introduction to Evelyn is fine. Like, she's not quite got that Paul Verhoeven RoboCop edge for me just yet. That comes in the next episode in the board meeting.
And now, reading the file, anonymous note from Resident Evil Revelations, V. Cole, who you can follow on Instagram at junks.trumpet.
I was forced on this mission, and I had no desire to come here for a job that could get me killed. At any rate, stage 1 is complete. I got the key for the freight lift. Now I can access the bilge. The ship was used as a base of operations for the terrorist attack on Terra Grigia 1 year ago. I found the UAV in the ship's foredeck that was used to disperse the virus. Finding the UAV was good. Getting attacked out of nowhere by an ugly monster was bad. I knew this mission would suck from the moment I took it. My head feels like it's gonna split open. I lost an eye already. It's hard to see. I feel like crap. Arms are starting to feel weird too. My right arm split into 2. Blood all over my body. Can't see my bones. Need doctor bad.
So, speaking of episode 3, which apparently was at one point called The Channel, is now called The Light, which is interesting. Let's move on to that one. James, what are your favourite and least favourite things about episode 3?
Oh man, there are so many. This is one of my standout episodes. I love this episode. One of my notes here, and you're gonna have to bleep me, but Wesker says, "Keep an eye on your sister," and I put that was a lie. When has Jade ever looked out to kept an eye on her sister ever? We get some Lisa Trevor hype with some reports and notes, lots of information in there. In fact, I put it in the Discord at one point. I think I might have pinned it, but lots of information in there. Another highlight is Baxter just going, "Those are rubber bullets, right?" in the freaking car. It made me laugh so much.
As if he cares.
I like Baxter because he's a cheesy, stupid, like evil guy, and like Ari is full of stupid, cheesy, evil guys, and he fits right in for me, which is why I love him.
He's this show's version of like Ricardo Irving.
He's like a mixture between Ricardo Irving and Irons in a way.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, for
without
me,
without the really messed up stuff.
Yeah, because he's done some. Baxter says he's done some like wild stuff too. What's that? So I like the touch with the family, because the past 2 episodes we've had Jade be quite aggressive and run away from things, and in this episode we see Jade find this family who she can help, and we this is what I mean about the show kind of trying to draw you in to like these characters and kind of get behind them. But in the end, as we hear at the end of this episode, she leaves them. But yeah, the family, like, I thought it was a good dichotomy because it's like, it gives an example of what she could be or what she could become, because she has a family herself. I just thought it was nice. It was a nice little bit of, like, it was uplifting because we just seen Jade for the past 2 episodes be a nutter. And then there was the board meeting, which I'll let Steve go into, but I loved that so much. The triple barrel shotgun in the channel as well. The triple barrel made me laugh so much. So the channel is my favorite part of this episode, but I would have liked it to be a bit brighter. I had to bump up my brightness a little bit. But at the same time, I got why they do it. It's the same reason why I like Alien and Aliens. They use darkness so well to hide like all the fiddly bits, so you can be immersed. But that I just loved everything about the channel. Baxter's little when he's moving in one of the Humvees, right? He's on top of it, he's standing up, and he goes for no reason. made me laugh my ass off. It was so funny. Yeah, and I've already mentioned like the spider being Shalob. Oh yeah, this was episode 3 with the reference to remake 3 with Jill.
Is it? Okay, there you go.
Yeah. And another thing in the channel was, and it was actually Netro who made me aware of this, and I went, oh yeah, all the levers in the channel look like they're from Revelations or a Resident Evil game.
Okay.
They all look like they're from a Resident Evil game in some way.
Yeah, the kill gate is very regenerator corridor in RE4. Not the first one, but the one when you have to escort Ashley. It's used in a common GIF you'll see on the internet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the spider. I want to congratulate the series. They should get an award just for the spider. You know, for having the guts to put it in the show and for making the spider itself. Unlike Capcom. Capcom. Put spiders in your games, Capcom cowards. But yeah, this thing looks truly monstrous and terrifying, and I definitely wanted to see more of it. I wanted to see more of this thing. But yeah, there was like another detail about the spiders. So I've kept spiders, and I've done a lot of research on spiders because of that. I don't think this is like not common knowledge, but spiders have pretty awful eyesight other than like jumping spiders. They do one thing which reminded me of Alien 3, again, another reference, where you see the narrow vision of the spider as it's chasing after Jade and the family. You see its narrow vision. It's got like blur on the side. It can only see like a very small letterbox, which I thought was a nice little touch. And then at the end, we hear the revelation where that Simon's mum is Evelyn, which made me giggle because every time I see Jade's face, every time a revelation comes up and Jade's face, the expressions on her face from that actor is so funny every time. I love it. And then to finish it off, we had the music choice of I'm Only Human After All after Jade left the family in the tunnel, which was really sad. I felt something at any rate, like in my face, tears started coming out of my eyeballs. But yeah, it was pretty heavy stuff for me.
I agree with you. Obviously, you guys talked about how good the spiders were. I didn't say my piece mostly because I don't feel like I got the impact from it that I perhaps should have, and I want to rewatch it and get that because I think it was a combination of, you know, the show was so dark and this is very timing the episode, but it's been so light and sunny this week in the UK. I think I need a really dark room to sit in and watch it and get the full effect. But what I obviously could see was great. I loved the fact that the spiders were in it. As you just said, the triple-barreled shotgun, fantastic reference to the Hydra from RE5 onwards. That was that's one of those references that's like, that's nice. That's a real fan sort of like nod. You know, anyone could put, and I know I called it out specifically, but anyone could put a green herb on a t-shirt or a red herb on a desk, as we've got in the show as well. But the Hydra, like, that takes a little bit of extra thinking, which was really, really nice. The other sort of referential thing I really liked about this episode, and it didn't really go anywhere, and regardless of this being its own universe, I really loved that they mentioned in the boardroom that the biggest customer of Umbrella is the United States government. I was like, yes! Another reference to the real villain of the Resident Evil universe. So that was cool. In terms of the things that I didn't particularly like, the transformation story actually dipped a little bit for me here. I was really invested in the last episode. I don't know, just didn't grab me as much this time around. Maybe it's because I was hoping for it to go somewhere quicker. Obviously, the Remake 3 thing was cool. Very expected, but not bad, and it was done really well. And that poor dude was the worst distraction ever. He's like, I'm going to go out there, and the spider's going to chase me, and you guys are going to get away. He got killed before they left the room, basically. So they didn't actually get a head start on the spider whatsoever.
The way he was going, I got it.
Yeah, basically. And then they ran away, and it was like, oh, poor guy sacrificed himself, and you didn't even make a move.
It's just like Jade, though, right? Just like Jade.
This is right. That's what I say. My other note here is she's a punk. She keeps getting saved by other people. It keeps happening. And again, same thing with the end of this episode as well, with the USS and all that stuff. As we've mentioned, keep seeing the USS throughout this show, who just look like Party Patrol more than they look like the actual Umbrella Secret Service. Like, throw away an iconic design with the gas masks for the most generic Robo Trooper ever. Sure, why not? But yeah, this one, It was fine. The action was good. It was good to see that action after the slower episode we had previous, but it didn't quite blow me away. Steve, what did you think of episode 3?
Generally, most of the scenes that I liked are Evelyn scenes, like the boardroom meeting where she almost foreshadows her own future fate with the whole doctored conditioning of the dog through to Joy, and the way that she basically one-ups Wesker, and like, how many tablets is it going to take? How many? 20,000 slams table. Like, you know, this is some very evil stuff, and the way that she just picks up the heavily infected rat and just cuts its head off with scissors. Incredible, ruthless stuff.
Yes.
You know, not to mention the fact that Lickers do something a bit more unique in this than they have done in all the other CGI appearances where they're just there, and they open the skull about and slash. Instead, they're like skulk around and yank people away. It's more like smokers from Left 4 Dead. Fun, interesting. Spider, again, it's not actually used that much. It's only like 2 scenes that you really see it full body, and gets murdered by a gate, not too dissimilar to how you kind of can smash a similar horrible beast U3 or U8, whichever one it is in RE4.
U3, I think.
Yeah, you can do. She does a gate smash on it. Obviously, it kills it in this. You know, it's Luke and the Rancor all over again. Pretty good. I actually liked it. Magnum was apparently useless. The pipe was also useless, and any of the side characters I didn't really give much of a heck about in the past. Sorry, future. Keep getting that mixed up because it looks so desiccated. Like there's the whole side story of the poor boy who's been beat. We all know how that goes. It's been in like zombie fiction since zombies began, and the tropes rote and boring. You know, I don't care how sad the family were. Just like, oh, okay, when does he turn, or when does someone leave, or when does it become just bleak and hopeless? And do we get bleak and hopeless abandoned zombie child with mother just cradling him? Great. We've seen that a few times, I think. Yeah, so generally speaking, my focus was mostly on the past, which is where itchy chasiness is starting to happen, hallucinations. She's now attacked Jade as well, or is that? Yeah, no, that's this episode, where she punches Jade and pushes her over, isn't it?
I believe so.
Episode 4, where they have the big hoo-ha about a party.
Yes.
Yeah, I see my notes are a bit messed up, can you tell? But yeah,
that's episode 4, yeah.
But generally, no real complaints. The highlight for me was Evelyn being psycho Resident Evil villain in the best possible way. Yeah, which I know a lot of people are still going to be like, oh, she's not really a super villain. Like, she's more interesting than Morpheus and Vincent. And I know they did horrific things, but I've said this before earlier in the podcast, but she actually does come across as a corporate evil who is willing to do despicable things for the bottom line, and she knows it, and she's happy with it. And she's also Simon's mum.
That's the benefit of having the number of hours that we get with this show. We get to go to these different places. Obviously, with video games and characters like Vincent and Morpheus, they just have to be the bad guy of the game, which is always set after the outbreak has occurred, and that kind of thing. This show has the advantage, James, as you said, of operational Umbrella Labs and stuff, and we get to see them be corporate and capitalist and having board meetings and stuff. So, you know, that really, really helps her, certainly.
Juxtaposed against Baxter and the Nod Troopers, it's night and day.
Absolutely. Kels, what did you think of episode 3?
I think mostly in line. I won't retread all the things that you guys have said. The spider scene, just again, you know, was one of the better parts of the show up to this point. The thing that I would have preferred the show did was a more X-Files thing and did a Monster of the Week, because we got Lickers and spiders in this show, which meant that neither of them had enough time dedicated to them. It was all too brief, and despite visually looking amazing, I would have liked to have seen 40 minutes with a spider stalking them, or 2 spiders, or things like that. And then the same goes for the Lickers, a separate episode for them. So yeah, just so brief, and that's what happens. I mean, you know, it's not cheap to make these monsters, so they have to use them sparingly, and it's a shame, but you know, fine. I liked the scenes. That being said, so you also mentioned that some of the parts, probably in the earlier part of this episode, is they did drag, like Billy going back to school and stuff was where this was the first real time, the first section of this episode where I started to think this is getting a bit dull. And I wasn't, maybe being overcritical, but very slow. But nice contrast with the action of the future. This one of the future episodes where I liked the stuff set in the future, whereas that wasn't really the case with probably the rest of the series. Wrestling reference, Luke Gallows, or aka not to Luke Gallows, makes a cameo as a smuggler, and that's quite funny. That's a very niche reference.
I thought exactly the same thing. I genuinely said out loud, is that Luke Gallows?
Yeah, I thought it was him. Board meeting scene, yeah, great. Yeah, that's it. I think you guys have said everything. I'm kind of with James. I agree. I thought there was some nice emotion with the end, although it was tropey, like Steve said. Yeah, I always feel bad when kids are dying, but I don't know.
Steve does care about kids dying, just not fictional zombie stuff. All right,
Let's stick that on a t-shirt.
I felt bad for the kid. I thought the parents were assholes because they've tried to hide it, and I just thought, what did you think was going to happen? But yeah, so great monster stuff, not enough of it, and some dragging scenes elsewhere. And I'll leave it there for episode 3 because I think we've covered it all.
It is interesting to note that looking at IMDb currently, fun fact, episode 2 and episode 3 are the highest rating episodes of the series at the moment. It slips a little bit for episode 4, The Turn. Which is interesting because, for all the positive of episode 3, I have to agree with some of the opinions here that, Kelsey, you said, you're starting to get a little bit tired of it. Feel that it's a little bit dull. There was something missing.
It was filler.
Yeah, a little bit so, because episode 4, my first note is intrigue about Wesker's history feels like a little bit too late. It felt like I could have done with some more of this to keep it trucking along. So obviously I was feeling a little bit of that, and I think episode 4 has a lot of cool stuff going on for it that kept me invested. I remember this being an episode that I watched at the end of an evening and thought, I'm actually really interested to see what happens next, so I'll give it that much. I really do like that by this point it's established that from episode 1, Jade coming into New Raccoon City as kind of the mope that doesn't want to be there, and Billy being like, give it a chance. By this point, Jade is meeting people and has got this sort of like pseudo boyfriend thing going on. Meanwhile, Billy is genuinely suffering. So I thought that was a fun little dichotomy, sort of turn, twist on what was going on with episode 1. Albert Wesker got to have an outburst to hit the failure of his antivirus that he was creating, which is more than Lance had got to do for a little while, so that was cool to just watch him trash a few things. And the other positive was the grenade door trick, which was fantastic. Rolling a grenade by a door, waiting for it to, or through a door, whatever she did, waiting for it to explode. It didn't go, and then when the door hit the grenade, it exploded. I thought that was pretty fun. It made up for the Chainsaw Man getting absolutely jobbed off.
Yeah.
1 red 9 bullet. I wish it was that simple.
Right? Yeah. Again, before other people had even pointed out how much they liked Baxter, I had here that I didn't care that he died. Just because he had a needlessly cool fight scene and he said the thing about the unlocking. He's still a mass murdering psycho, so why would I care? Jade continues to get saved by other people. Zombies continue to look stupid. Also, this episode reused footage of zombies running through corridors at least once, which I thought was a little bit cheap. And then the way the episode ended. So, just to catch back up, the storyline we've got at the moment is Billy is infected. We know the T-virus in this universe takes 3 hours from infection to fully transform you. An exact 3 hours, 3 days apparently. So at exactly the same time, I suppose, Wesker and Jade figured this out, put in on their own timers, think back the hours to when it happened, put it on their own timers. But don't worry, Billy, you're okay. My arbitrary watch timing says so, because that's how medicine works. I've decided that it was this many hours exactly since you got bit, and you didn't transform when it hit 0. You're fine. I thought that I get that we're going with, actually, she's not going to turn. It was like, you don't actually know that. Just because it's counted down to 0 doesn't mean that she's okay. So
but they said it in the script, Si.
It's so stupid. Kelsey, what did you think of episode 4?
So I'll be honest with you, out of all the episodes, this is the one I have the fewest notes about, so it's not going to take me
Sorry,
long.
because I feel like I went on there, so...
No, it's fine. Despite some of the good stuff which you did mention, this is the episode that nearly tore it for me, because of a couple of things you mentioned there. The watch stuff wound me up. The skateboarding scene was awful. I don't know. That again, that was filler. That's just made no sense to me. They didn't look like skateboarders, act like skateboarders. It was just silly. The stupid look on her face as well. I almost paused the episode and I thought I'll pick this up later at that point. Really didn't like that. I didn't know what I was watching. And then the Baxter stuff, I was like, am I supposed to be rooting for this guy? Like, I was just, no. They were trying to drag me along to root for him, and it was not happening. So 2 big black marks for me. I don't want to ever hear a bad word said about Crush from Welcome to Raccoon City again, because obviously this is the Jamiroquai episode, and I didn't hate it, but I just thought, I've seen a few people saying it was really good, and it's like, well, yeah, it's just as ridiculous as far as I'm concerned, and I preferred the Crush one, so I don't want to hear people complain about Crush if they like this. Salvador being off to one shot, boo, really, really annoying. The meat grinder location was very generic and not as, just not as kind of atmospheric as I thought they think it was. So just very sort of boring across the board, but then loved Wesker getting mad, as you said. His character was getting better every episode. And yeah, that's kind of it. Like, this was an episode where I think I shared in the Discord at the end of it, I was like, I'm struggling at this point by the end of it. It did pick up for episode 5, which we'll get to for the second part of the podcast, but yeah, not a great deal of notes. At this point, I'd had to drag through some stuff. I'm not saying it's a terrible episode, but for me personally, again, this was where I have to dedicate my time to watching this stuff, and I was starting to get frustrated that I'm using my time to watch this show. Grenades exploding is all well and good and fun, but when there's 45 minutes of rubbish around it, it's like, yeah. Bit of a struggle for me. Again, I'm not trying to be vitriolic. I didn't hate it. There's more good stuff to come. But yeah, just I can't excuse the skateboard scene and them trying to have Baxter do a face turn. It was just nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
Steve, positives and negatives of episode 4, if you could.
Oh, no, that's a challenge. Right, so we've got French cannibals in a German prison with the Spanish Chainsaw Man, which is surprising.
He is French, by the way. The subtitles say he speaks French.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Just wanted to confirm that.
Do you mean French Heisenberg, right?
Exactly. The whole prison feels like they just took screenshots from Revelations 2's like chapter 1 and turned the light down. It's just generic anywhere misery prison, and it's got like the big plot MacGuffin in Mother Zero in it. Yeah, it's just okay. I understand the plot relevance due to what happens later on, but otherwise this episode is just filler cack. And I can see that one scene where Baxter goes Rambo on everybody. I'm surprised no one's mashed it up with Mercenaries music or Doom music yet, because as much as I don't dislike Jamiroquai, it definitely doesn't fit here. You know, it definitely doesn't feel like it should. And yeah, again, the past stuff. See, I got it right this time. The past stuff is in the actual past in 2022. Is a bit meek. It's a bit meh. We get the whole, is it Angel Rubio, the journalist who's come in messing things up, allegedly. He arrives in town and is immediately picked up by the Umbrella Security Service within minutes, despite the fact they take 30 minutes to respond to a lab in the previous episodes, but we'll ignore that. And then there's some bits of Dawson Creek somehow got into the edit, with the whole skateboard scene that I just don't give 2 flying swear words about. It's just rubbish. Meanwhile, Lance Reddick is actually doing his damnedest to carry this whole thing on his back. And those scenes, to be fair, are fairly solid, where he's trying to, like, the panicked father running around the house and smashing. Seriously, I think any scene he's in, I just really go from like some kind of trance to, oh, good stuff happens. And that good stuff could be just pissed off dad.
Yeah.
We've got ultra violent, like, shirted corporate dude, but I'm more invested in dad looking for child. So it says a lot for this episode, really. Like, and it does feel like every episode now has got a rhythm where Jade will get herself into some horrible catastrophe right at the end, and then we will see exactly how that resolves in the next episode. It's like getting a bit Dragon Ball on the future side is what I'm saying. Like, tune in next time to see how Goku gets out of it this time, you know. bit too repeated tropes.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't keen on those cliffhangers, especially in general on that side of the timelines. What made me want to watch the next episode was more of the fact that at this point, they were, implication that we were going to get some stuff about Albert Wesker, backstory, and for all of my brain being like, stop picking holes in, Evelyn Marcus couldn't possibly be a thing. When they said, your dad died in 2009, I was like, that's accurate. What? An actual canonical accurate detail. So that was what made me go, okay, I'm in for episode 5, which is a little bit cheap on my part, where it's like, I care because I'm a Resident Evil fan and I want the Resident Evil things. Whereas I don't care about the future storyline and how the cliffhanger goes there, because now there's a zombie that screams and it makes the other zombies listen.
Feels very Left 4 Dead, right? Not to say that again with the lickers, but it does feel like they're peeling from all the bits of zombie fiction. I think there is like a screaming zombie in RE6.
Yes, there is. Yeah,
it's not like a mastermind.
I guess Control Plaga, maybe, but I don't think it goes that deep. But it's for their own thing at the end of the day, and sort of in the context,
it's
in the context of everything, it's fine. James, positives and negatives of episode 4.
Very disappointed in all of you. Baxter is an evil, tropey character. He's been in every single Resident Evil. There's always a character like him, right? Also, I can't, he's not, that's the point with him. He's not meant to be, you're not meant to like him. But damn do I like him because he's a big man kicking ass. You never see that.
I'll give you that. That.
You never see that in movies or anything. You don't see a larger gentleman kick butt, and we can, right? And they showed it. We saw a Red 9, the best game in all Resident Evil, right? I found him funny. Every word he said was funny because it's like I found him funny for the same reasons as I found Alfred Ashford funny.
That might be it, James. I think you've hit the nail on the head because he's trying to be funny, and I'm not laughing at his jokes. He kind of irritates me.
Right, but yeah, I understand that. But it's I get like you not being able to like him, but it's like
that's a personal taste thing. I can see why other people would. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, he's so funny to me, because he just reminds me of a lot of characters in Resident Evil. The other thing is I've heard the F word being said a couple of times. Filler. They found the zombie queen in this episode. This whole thing led to them finding the zombie queen, which was a huge point for the story. So I don't see how this could be a filler episode. He gave us a little bit of action, I don't like that someone is always coming in to save the heroes. But this is also Resident Evil. This happens all the time. Who's going to give you that rocket launcher at the end of the game?
Yeah.
Right? This always happens with every boss. There's always something happening that someone else assists you. It is about cooperation. I would like to see Jade do something off her own back. And we do see her kick butt. In fact, at the end of this, right, there was a tension scene done right. And of course, we know she survives, but I was so interested and so invested in how she got out of that room. When she phones up her kid, man, another kid scene. I don't like children, but it got me. Right? I was sitting there and I was like, oh man, she's literally talking to her kid before she thinks she's gonna die. That's awful and really well done tension, because we didn't get any kind of tension breaking there. It was really done well. And again with the grenade and the explosion. I feel like Baxter died too fast because he is evil. He is, right? And you're not meant to like him, right? But he should have been given a better death. Not honorable, but he should have been given a better death. Because I wanted it to be someone that he'd personally done over. He did kind of do over Jade. He needed a bit more progression in his backstory, like because his death just felt very forced at the end, when it didn't need to be. And the other thing, he has 2 dogs. I can't hate somebody who has 2 dogs.
Right.
I love dogs.
So here's the thing: is that I think that there's potential there for something so much more. They could have tweaked. I agree with you in the sense that if the character is written now, they could have longed it out for longer, and he could have got a much more effective death, actually being killed at the hands of someone, for some catharsis. Alternatively, if they want us to like the character, then maybe don't have him command the party patrol to take down an entire settlement of people. Without that scene, then you could have even had a redemption thing. I would have liked to see more of him for the reason that you say, sort of like the inclusivity reasons. Like, the actual fight scene itself was cool. I wasn't necessarily bothered by him getting a cool fight scene because it's like that's the good character hasn't had a cool fight scene yet, so why should the bad character, the quote unquote good guy character?
Right, and that's what I mean. Is that like we've seen him be bad, but then we got a very limited look at how good he could be, like to an extent, right?
I mean, he does honor his word and let Jade go, or try to.
Yeah. He tells her to keep going. Right, so that's kind of redemption in a way, but I would have loved more of him because you don't see that kind of character fighting, kicking butt often in TV. And even though he was evil and he was campy and great, like he was super cheesy, and I loved that. Then we have there was the best part of that episode was the zombie queen, right?
Was it though?
I just think as a concept this is really the thing, like.
Really cool, yeah. As you say, a really cool concept.
Well, no, James, I was saying I didn't like it. This is the thing, because I felt they had to find, this idea of the zombies mutating and stuff, and this is where we are getting down to the real nitty-gritty and potentially cinema sins territory, which I don't think we are, because it's our job to try and be objective and get all the detail out, and it's what we do on these podcasts. When I saw that was happening, I just groaned and rolled my eyes, because I think zombies are so established as zombies. Anytime in any zombie media, they try to bridge that gap from what a zombie is to this zombie can use a gun, this zombie can talk, this zombie can do that. I don't think it ever works. And I don't think it worked here.
So you don't like Remake?
So I don't like Remake what?
Remake, Resident
What, with
Evil
the zombies
Remake.
run? No, I don't. I said on the Remake podcast I hate that the Crimson Heads.
You don't like the Crimson Heads? Okay.
No, I was very specific about that. I don't like the Crimson Heads. But yeah, sorry, long way to a short point. Just it just reeks of that try hard to no, this could happen. And we mentioned the virus mutating. I think zombies are zombies, and they should be zombies. For me personally, I would much rather spend time in character development than monster development, and it's just a plot device that I guess you're either going to love or hate. And for me, it was like this screeching old lady zombie, Mother Zero she's called in the subtitles, and it just doesn't land for me, because I would have rather they spent more time on character development than monster development, as I've said. And I don't want to sound like I'm ranting against it, because I've mentioned some other good stuff that I really like, but in terms of you've talked about how this episode builds lots of tension and isn't filler, and the only reason I disagree is because of the thing we said right near the start, with how we're watching 2 TV shows in one episode, and I might have been invested more if it was just all in one timeline. I think I might have done, but because minutes before and after I'm watching these ridiculous scenes with Billie Wesker, I think everything else falls apart. And I know you've watched this show a lot of times. I've watched it once through, and I don't know if you should have to watch a show 4 times to kind of find all these little details and nuances. I'm not sure.
Well, I enjoyed it.
I'm not sure that makes. I'm not sure that gives it the kind of quality that we're sort of trying to say it has.
Right.
In some way, I think.
Right. Well, your first point, you talk about like the zombies and the virus. The virus mutates. It always does. We know that. I mean, heck, pandemic, right? They've also been foreshadowing it the entire series, that this was going to be a thing. So I think in terms of a writing
But
perspective,
that doesn't mean that doesn't mean it's enjoyable to watch. I don't think that's, like I said, because of zombies and how established zombies are. Because I just think it looks silly when zombies start acting intelligent. They look at them. It just, for me, that's where it doesn't land. And I know it's the story they're doing, but it's just
That's more of a taste thing
I
for you,
can't
isn't
hang
it,
on to
Kels?
it.
Would you say that's more of a...
The what, sorry?
Your personal taste for zombies is that they should be always slow shuffling.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And I said it at the very beginning, like, I don't like the running zombies, I don't like this. And I can't think of another piece of media where they do it. In Land of the Dead, the zombies start to use guns, and it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, they talked that the reason that, you know, it was something to do with pheromones and stuff like that, and that's why the zombies are being controlled. And yeah, it's just very write words and make it make sense for me. And this show has some good stuff going for it, and that plot device just didn't work for me. And I'm not trying to kind of crap over people that do like it, but I think we're treading into territory here where, yeah, it's like, no, this is good because they said they foreshadowed it. It's like, it doesn't matter if they foreshadow something that's bad, that doesn't mean it's good just because they foreshadowed
but
it.
it's not
See?
bad.
See, my gripes are completely
It's
different.
not bad.
Like, I wish she did
I
something
think
cool.
zombies being clever is bad for me.
Well, clever, yeah, but I didn't get clever from that queen. All she was doing was sending her pheromones. It gave me ant vibes, not like insect vibes. It didn't give me this lady has 12 intelligence. You know, it gave me that she was like a peak figure in a hive. She was a queen. Like, I mean, they called her a queen in French. You know, so yeah. I
kind of wish she did something.
Because I agree with you. Like, if zombies become intelligent, then all they are is smart, less smart humans, and that's kind of not fun, right? But if you start to employ like other things, like other animals, other things that they can do around the world, that is really interesting to me. I mean, being an Alien fan, you know, like it kind of, you know, that really speaks to me. So that's the reason why I liked it.
But the alien queen does like lay eggs and do all these like cool, awesome things, whereas this is just a lady who screams.
But she's the first of her. She's the first of her kind that we found, that we've discovered.
I appreciate it. I kind of wish there was more of a search for it rather than she ends up in the same prison. Like, I know she's looking for an answer. I wish she kind of had signposts that maybe it's in France. I need to get to France ASAP.
Yeah, that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Like, I think if it was all set in the future, I would have got there in a sort of nicer way and been less critical of it. But it's very difficult to care, and the reason is because it's so convenient, because you're spending so little time in these timelines that, yeah, it's just like, oh, is that the explanation, is it? Whereas if there's more, all this stuff you're talking about, James, about, oh, it's like ants and stuff, yeah, but the show doesn't talk about that. And if they'd maybe done some groundwork there for that sort of thing, then I can buy into it a bit more.
But they did at the beginning. They kind of go through this stuff with you. She talks about, she says
she said the virus mutates, but she doesn't say that they're going to be.
She also says that they can sense the blood. Like by
but she's
smell.
looking for signs of intelligence when she's trying to do the rabbit test at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Or like
I see what you're saying.
she's looking. I think it's like something to do with leadership. She says something about leadership.
She does, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm looking at it in a different way. So it kind of works for me, but it's different shakes, isn't it?
I think under a microscope it might work. I'm not sure how it's presented works as the TV show. That's all I'm trying to say. Just we can be very generous to media, and one of the big criticisms of Welcome to Raccoon City, I keep talking about it. Oh, sorry. It's good. It expects you to know information from Resident Evil, and I don't have a huge problem with that. But then, this show doesn't spend enough time doing any of it for me, and I've kind of got away from my original point. And I don't want us to rant about the same specific thing, but yeah, I just think maybe under the microscope, and if you look at it, you could pull some stuff out of it. But generally, that might explain why this show's being badly reviewed, because it's not working. It's not grabbing people in the best sort of way, and it was an eye roll moment for me. And I love Resident Evil. I love the nonsense that comes with Resident Evil, and it just, yeah. And I do blame the structure of the show, the bouncing backwards and forwards, because I think I wouldn't possibly be that angry at it if I just had more time.
Also, Salvador was a human.
Yeah, I guess so.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like, because if they kept him as a zombie, you know, people would have said, "Oh, he's, you know, why that doesn't make any sense because Salvador was a Las Plagas, victim."
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't try and over-explain. I know it's funny because a lot of the time with some stuff in Resident Evil can be like, I really wish they'd give a backstory to El Gigante or something. But in this instance, considering the fast pace of the show and stuff, I'm glad they didn't try and explain what was going on there. And for all we know, it's just a psychopath with a chainsaw and a bag on his head.
He's just a maniac.
Yeah, it's the post-apocalypse, and it's a weird cult in a prison with, you know, Daniel Fabron. So.
I actually at the beginning of my notes I put, "This is budget Paul Atreides."
So yeah, you know, it worked in that context. Okay, let's sort of wrap up, I guess, because we are starting to get to the point of overrun.
Oh God, I totally forgot about the fact that he has a whole monologue, and it might as well just, what the is this bullshit? Sorry. Sorry.
Beep, beep, beep.
That's all right. Don't worry, it's written down. Right, Kelsey, would you like to wrap us up at this point? We're going to close up talking about the show here. We'll return to it in the next episode. But I suppose my sort of like last question to ask everyone before we finish is, how are you feeling at this point in the show when you were watching it? Were you looking forward to watching more, or were you very concerned about the future for the show?
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it nice and brief. I was looking forward to seeing more of the Wesker storyline. I was. And Evelyn. Really like those characters. I just, as I've alluded to at the end of episode 4, and because of the dragging scenes in episode 3, the show was asking a lot of me. But, you know, I'm committed and I'm a fan. I'm going to watch it towards the end. So it's not like trash or anything like that. And I thought, but I posted in Discord at the end of episode 4, yeah, I'm struggling a bit, but yeah, there's still loads more to be said about this show. Just a mixed bag. The first 4 episodes, some really great stuff, some just not so great for me.
Yes, Steve, how are you feeling about the show at this point?
Nothing to complain about, believe it or not. My initial viewing was fine. Like, you know, there was just, I had to take breaks, obviously, because, you know, spoilers for the listeners, I'm still a bit COVID-y. I'm getting over it, so that might be why I'm a bit airheaded sounding, more so than usual. Yeah, so honestly, it wasn't great, but I've seen worse. Is that fair? Like, at
right.
This point, and very much through the whole thing, I am more invested in the past storyline. That, spoilers for part 2, that doesn't really change much. But the first half wasn't really offending me when Baxter wasn't on screen. It was just a bit meh. And now the prospect of something without him, I suppose, more uplifting for past me. I would have been jumping for joy when that man died. So
I think generally I'm in agreement with you guys. I was more invested in the 2022 stuff over the 2036. You know, due to airs of it being a little bit generic for me, and there was obviously there's the conspiracy stuff, and you're wondering about the Wesker twins and all that with the present day stuff. So it had some intrigue, which is what I wanted, rather than the future stuff, which is a little bit just kind of like moving from set piece to set piece with a little bit of convenience thrown in. And some of that comes with the fact that, you know, this is only an 8-episode season and they want to tell as much as they can in those 8 episodes. So sometimes things have to be convenient. I do think that perhaps I was thinking this at the time, that this probably could have done with a few more drafts, have a couple more people look at it, because there were some dips here and there where it was kind of like it's not really any answers going on. You've set up a lot of questions. We're not getting any actual movement on a lot of the main stuff in the show, which for me is, why is Wesker here? What are Umbrella up to? That kind of stuff. So I could have done with more of that sooner. Just a bit more teasing, a little bit of information every now and then. Because whilst I had my issues where I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. When you end on a cliffhanger like episode 4 does, with your conspiracy theorist guy turning up out of nowhere with promising all this information, that's what kind of drew me back in and being like, okay, I am interested in the next episode at the very least. So yeah, certainly a mixed bag. I certainly wasn't tuning out. Yeah, it's unfortunately, I guess, it's kind of what I expected to a certain extent. James, how are you feeling about the show? Only 4 episodes in.
So 4 episodes in, there were a lot of things I didn't expect. There was a lot of like things that it was typical kind of action movie stuff where I was like, well, I know you're going to live, but I'm really interested in how you're going to live. How are you going to get through this? How is this going to like conclude? There's a lot of that in the first 4 episodes. The next 4 episodes, it goes a lot deeper than that. But yeah, I think it adds a lot to, I guess, RE mythos outside of the games. It's interesting how they've framed it. I think it's good. I think it's actually got longevity, just purely of who it's being directed at. It's just really unfortunate that, I mean, I'm gonna say it again because I said it in a tweet a week and a half ago. But guys, this show had over 500 reviews negatively put on it in the first 2 hours of it going live. And it had a 27% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, right? Tomatoes. Like, you don't do that. Don't review on something before bloody watching it. Like, if you watch it and then you think it's not very good, then I will listen to you. But if you do that, or you try and attack me or my friends or anyone else, like who we've got a couple in chat right now who have also been attacked because we like certain bits about it, like. Yeah, no, we won't respect your opinion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, completely true. 100% agree with all of that. And as the live chat is saying, it is worth mentioning that the general consensus, and I think we're probably all in this boat, is that the second half of the season, whatever we think of the first half, the second half is more positive. There's definitely a lot to talk about in the second part of this podcast. So we'll be getting to that as soon as possible so we can talk about the rest of the show, the good and the bad. But hopefully a little bit more good than the other. Well, nothing else remains to me but to thank our contributors, our patrons, and our listeners. Join the First Aid Spray Discord server to become part of our community and hear the show early and unedited. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, and more. All of these links and all of our content can be found at faspraypod.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcasting apps. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a review where you can and spread the good word. Don't forget that you can support the show by picking up some merch or at patreon.com/FASprayPod for as little as $1 a month. On our next episode, we conclude our journey through New Raccoon City and the post-apocalypse in the second and conclusive half of our take on Resident Evil for Netflix. Thank you to the panel. You can follow all of the Pueblo people individually. I'm at Cyniac_123. Steve is at FP Steve Was Taken. James is at Moist Owlet OFF, and Kelsey is at K_D_B_. And finally, thank you for listening and have a good week. So I watched for those of you who don't know, I watched Welcome to Raccoon City last night for the first time in 7 months. And I was looking at that show, and obviously they did a kind of thing there where Jill obviously looked completely different and stuff like that, and Leon as well. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this has to be a thing in every Resident Evil adaptation. It should be a thing in every Resident Evil adaptation, because Resident Evil's so bloody white. Like, every main character is white, so you should expect this thing, because nobody wants to make a movie that doesn't reflect the real world, for sake. It's made by Japanese developers and what they think America looks like in the 90s.